Okay, good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for February 8th, 2021, 10 a.m. session. There is no public testimony during the review session. The following items are to be adjourned. Item number 1, 2019-271BZ, 37 Manson Avenue, Staten Island. Item number 2, 86348BZ, 259-16 Union Turnpike, Queens. Item number 3, 2019-278BZ, 9201 Fifth Avenue, Brooklyn. Item number 4, 2019-269BZ, 3425 Rombots Avenue, the Bronx. This following item is postponed. Item number 5, 2020-1BZ, 31 West 27th Street, Manhattan. The following item is deferred. Item number 6, 2019-16BZ, 25001 Northern Boulevard, Queens. The next items are decisions. Item number 7, 38985BZ, 2090 Bronxdale Avenue, the Bronx.
The Bronx. 1 second. Okay. Sorry, wrong one. Okay. We have to defer this decision because the applicant, unfortunately, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The applicant unfortunately can't seem to figure out what. Roy, can you, oh, I can't. Please give me host authority. Someone, and Vinroy, can you mute yourself, please? Because I think we had, yeah, thanks. Okay. But I need to be host. There we go. Thank you. All right. So, we need to defer this because the applicant can't seem to figure out what planting detail is. They are asking this agency to provide them with a how-to on planting bed details with a curb. And I just don't really understand it. And I'd have to say, because we've had other submissions from other applicants who managed to figure out how to do this. Sorry. And I have to ask this applicant, when they appeared before Landmarks Commission or City Planning Commission or the Department of Buildings or Department of Transportation or Department of Environmental Protection, do they ask those agencies to give them the information and the details that are needed to show on the drawings? I'm quite astonished by this. And I want to say that this may sound petty because it's just one detail missing, but I just don't understand the applicant community that expects the BSA to do the work for them. And so I'm not going to do the work for them. They have to figure out how to do this. And they have to submit when we instruct them to submit. Otherwise, they delay approval of their project. And their client should know that the reason for the delay is because the consultants can't seem to get their acts together. I'm very upset about that because it's been taken far too long. Too much time on our part to try to do the work of the applicants. It's just wrong. Okay.
Oh, all right. You had seen the submission Friday, Madam Chair, right?
I saw the submission there,
but I gave them that time to put it in for Friday.
I didn't see anything new that showed.
Okay.
That showed that they put in the proper detail. Unless something was submitted that I don't know about, then please forward it to me and we can take this up later today. But I seem to remember that you and I said, if they can't do it, then we just defer.
Okay. All right.
No,
I just want to make sure you saw what was submitted on Friday.
Well,
okay.
That's the thing. I think I saw what they sent on Friday. If I didn't, and you think it's a different detail, then just forward to me what it is and I'll look at it. But okay. So all I have is something that was submitted maybe earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
Item number 8, 29499BZ, 521 Fifth Avenue, Manhattan.
The requested change was made to the drawing, so I'd like to make a motion. I don't think there were any conditions, a motion to grant.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Item number 9, 2409BZ, 78-10, 164th Road, Queens. I
Sorry.
emailed you on Sunday the fire department letter on this. Did everyone see that?
I didn't see a fire department letter.
Yeah, they said they did an inspection.
Yes. Yes.
Remember, there was supposed to be an inspection and they supposed to do it on the 2nd and they did it a little later, but they said they found no violations, I believe.
They found no violation.
Yeah.
Okay.
They said they have no objection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I do have to say, this is just making sure I'm in the right case. This is 2409BZ, right?
Yes, 78-10, 164th Road, Queens.
So this is one of those, this is going to be sort of a theme for this hearing because it's kind of lots of astonishing submissions, right? So incredibly, on the eve of our voting to dismiss or deny this application, and after more than 1 year of delayed hearings and avoided submissions, the applicant has actually decided to respond to our directions, at least in writing, and made submissions to argue its case. It argues that it passes the 3-pronged Putnam-Armonk case, which has to do with the right to continue a variance or vesting, because in 2014, it went to city planning to obtain a special permit. Of course, that was 6 years ago. It says it had managerial problems delaying further pursuit of the variance. But we also know, and it doesn't discuss this, that it cannot get a certificate of need from the State Department of Health to build the approved project because it has low occupancy rates. That was the case in 2019 before the pandemic closures began. That's what it started its application with in November of 2019. It then argues that the mess in the side yard is similar to messes in other facility yards, and that should then be okay. And I didn't take the time, because I didn't have the time, to check whether any of the cited locations, many of which have only 1 or 2 storage containers on site, are adjacent to residences like this one, or the subject of variances like this one. Of course, the applicant made no efforts to clean their yard up or to show us that they've done that, or improve the hazardous medical waste pickup frequency, which turns out to be once a week, or even fence it off from the easy access by anyone because it's just a completely open side yard on one side. Although it apparently installed a lock on one of the containers, though I'm not sure which. So without a fire lit under them, we couldn't even get responses from their attorney. And the fire was, we're going to vote to deny, right? Or vote to dismiss. So we couldn't even get a response from the attorney without that fire. So I'm curious what type of fire will bring action to clean the site. And so I just have to pose the question to commissioners because I'm kind of, I'm kind of betwixt here. After 10 years, is the variance premature because there's no certificate of need possible until the occupancy rates increase? And the whole idea of rebuilding this was to adjust to new occupancy rates. It doesn't seem to be enough if the facility is, as they claim, obsolete or something, because it's not that they're tearing down the building. So they would be renovating an obsolete facility and they don't necessarily need the expansion, right? So my question is, should they then come back when they are ready instead? Because maybe after 10 years, maybe even the programmatic requirements are different in this kind of a facility. A lot's happened in healthcare. And And in that case, we would just leave it to the Department of Health, Department of Buildings and Fire Department to handle the mess on that site, which is really whose job it is to handle the mess anyway. So those are my questions. I wouldn't want to open it up for hearing today if commissioners decided to continue with this. But then we would just schedule it for another hearing date to continue. But at the last hearing, everyone was fed up. And it has been a year of non-responsiveness. And all of a sudden we get repeated submissions, I think, of the same thing that are just our arguments. So I'll go around the room, Vice Chair Shanda.
As you mentioned, I mean, after a lot of asking, we did finally get the information. I found the information very helpful. I do believe the applicant has met the Putnam test, especially with regards to, even though the special permit is no longer applicable, it did go through all the necessary steps of trying to work towards it. The fact that the occupancy rate was a reason why I couldn't get CO, there are so many other reasons that lie into hospitals' ability to secure an approval. I don't think that is quite in our expertise. And what we are looking for is, I mean, and we also know from some other cases that sometimes it is the cart before the horse kind of situation, that they need to show to the other agencies that there is a set of approvals in place for them to go ahead in order for them to go to the next step. So not knowing all of those various complex elements of steps and requirements, and some of them duplicated, some of them end up being circuitous and may seem premature at our end. I am not at all willing to deny this application. I'm very much willing to open to hearing it further and help them make sure that they do recognize the concerns that we have raised and gets addressed. I also would say that this application, while it is in a residential district, the containers are stored in the yard, which is buffered by 4 other buildings that is owned by the nursing home facility, and it is used by the nursing home facility. So the the actual residential homes are not immediately abutting the container. So there is enough of a buffer that is there. And yes, I do urge them to make sure that they clean the site, keep the site clean, and are very vigilant on the safety and the cleanliness of it. And it would be good to see the pickup services being improved and increase maybe the frequency of it. But other than that, I would go, I will be willing to open it and hear it and make sure that they deliver. And maybe we need to notify the owner of the applicant of the property that if they need to move forward, they need to do this. It's not just working with the council. That's all.
I just want to add, though, that the certificate of need explanation was given to us by council. So we didn't, that's how they started. They said, we can't proceed because we can't get a certificate of need because occupancy rates are low. So that's their statement, right?
That is I agree. That is and I think there is a weakness in some of the submission, and there has been inconsistency. And this is where, if the owner is listening to it, would be smart enough to dig into it and make sure they get it done right and explain this properly to whoever it needs to be, so that we are informed of it properly. We are going by what we are told, but from some of the cases that we have heard, and that we do know that some of these things are circuitous, and in order for them to secure certain approvals, they need to show that they have a project that is ready to go. And one of the things what ready to go means, that you have the necessary, all the approvals in place to be able to go and just submit the plan and get it going. Same thing goes for financing. Same thing goes for a lot of these certification. So I'm very sympathetic towards that, and I very much understand that. And not knowing every inch and details of every sequence that goes into every agencies that would be involved in a nursing home case. And there are many, many agencies, many requirements that I think it's impossible for us to know and connect the dots in the perfect linear manner. So I do urge the applicant to clarify these things as clearly as possible and help us understand the situation and their need much more clearly. I do recognize that. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
I'm also sympathetic to the applicant in this case. I feel that this is not a very simple variance. It's more complicated because it does require sign-offs from other agencies. And it's unfortunate that bad management and staff turnover just happened to resolve shortly before the COVID epidemic, which then robbed them of their ability to apply for the certificate of need. So I would hate to throw the case out and have them have to start from scratch all over again, which is pretty costly. So I'm more in favor of letting the case continue on our calendar as is.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Sheta, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Last hearing, we heard this. I had two concerns. The first one was related to the fire department, and this one is mitigated now. So like 50% of my concerns are done. The other one is the storage units that they like identified as A through H. I'm not sure if these storage units, the containers are legal. Wouldn't these be considered as floor area? And if they are illegal, it's an illegal addition to the existing floor area. The total for these containers, the total footprint or area, I would say, for these containers are like slightly above or below 1,000 square feet. So I'm not sure if this one of the reasons that like made them reluctant to proceed with the enlargement, in addition to, of course, the other factors, the difficulty and you know, that sign off from many agencies. So I would, right now, if these containers are legal, I'm fine with the applications. But if they are not, I don't think this enlargement is going to be done soon, and I'll be hesitant to let this case go.
Okay. So the applicant submitted, their submission talked about the legality, whether or not it's true. They talked about the legality of the containers, saying that they're temporary structures, therefore they don't count as floor area. That's not my recollection, that temporary structures are not floor area, and that they also don't count as lot coverage in a community facility. I don't know if in this is zoning district, but in community facilities, you can usually have 100% lot coverage on the first floor, right? But I would say that one of the sort of underlying themes throughout this year of hearings where we haven't gotten any answers has been the legality of all of that junk that's stored in the side yard. So I think actually what we need is a Department of Buildings inspection into the site. Is that stuff legal back there in terms of buildings? And then the other is Department of Health inspection. The applicant, the attorney said that there are Department of Health inspections, but we don't have any proof of that they actually looked at all that stuff that was stored in the back, where Commissioner Shibeta was able to last month, like walk in and take a picture of the Sharps boxes, just like that, right? So now, granted, maybe they put a lock on it now, but that's the question, is what is the standard? And there's no gate that prevents people from going right onto that route. So shouldn't there be a fence there so that nobody can go in unless they have a key to the gates, et cetera? So I do think that for our sort of peace of mind, because it seems to me that this is going to be the condition for the next 5-10 years, frankly, because they've made no efforts to get the funding. They have no certificate of need, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be the case for a long time. At least we can secure the site. Go ahead.
I did read through what they submitted, and I didn't buy the argument that these are temporary structures. I have seen temporary structures before, and when you put a temporary structure on a site like this, you should have a valid reason to put that temporary structure. This is number one. And number two, it should be for a specific time span until you achieve something. Here, I'm not sure how long these containers or storage units have been there on site, but I believe it's years. And if this is the case, I start to like be skeptical about whether these are really temporary structures or are they permanent, and we're gonna think we see if we can keep them. I don't know, but if these are, if the intention is to use these units as permanent storage, I doubt that we're gonna see a movement on this project soon.
Right. Mhm.
Why would you pay more if you can pay less? This is
Right.
the attitude.
Yeah, understood. Thanks. Okay. Commissioner Shibata?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, there was always a lock on that on the sharp spot. It was just unlocked when I did my visit. And while I understand some of the reasons why some of my colleagues want to keep this case before us, I disagree with the reasons, but the result is the same. I want to keep this case before us so we can keep an eye on it. I think that we'll be able to ensure that the site is cleaned up. I think we'll be able to make contact with other agencies to ensure that they review the site, and we can only do that if the case remains before us. With regard to the future of this case, I entirely hope they get their act together. I can understand that maybe the argument would be we don't have enough, we can't get enough people here because of the conditions at the site, and we need to fix that, and that's why we need this variance, et cetera, and I can appreciate that. But to make that argument stand, we need to see some progress here, and we haven't. So I hope, I want to keep this case open. I want this case to be successful, but my primary concern right now is, and while Commissioner Vice Chair is completely correct that the budding residential homes are purchased and owned by the nursing home, the access is just too easy. You know, this is a residential neighborhood. There are other community centers nearby. There are children in this area. The access to getting and out of what can be a very potentially dangerous situation is way too easy. And I was expecting that they would have addressed that, because that was primarily what I was speaking about at the last hearing. Make a gate here. As far as the lock is concerned, where the sharps are is really it's a flimsy wooden box. You have these containers that are holding all of these, the large containers are holding sheets, while the most dangerous things are being held in this flimsy box with this lock that when I went was unlocked. I'd be much more comfortable with it being held in a different type of container that is an automatic lock box, like something that you put a code in to open and close. That's a temporary fix for right now, but we definitely need some sort of progress here that is more than explaining away that just because others are doing it and it's similar to other situations, it should be okay if we do it. I don't think, I think that if we accept that kind of logic, we'll never make any progress on any drive-throughs or anything. Just because something's been wrong elsewhere doesn't mean we should permit it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, Vice Chair Shanda has her hand up. You're muted.
With regards to temporary storage, I know we hear this case, and every time we come around to it, I mean, in gasoline stations, we see these temporary tool sheds that have been there, and DOB many times has been asked to opine on it, and they have basically considered it to be temporary. And I was just looking at the community facility permitted obstruction section, section 24 Section 24-33 permitted obstructions in the yards, and item number 8 says sheds, tool rooms, or other similar accessory buildings or other structure for domestic or agricultural storage will, with a height of not exceeding 10 feet above the level of the rear yard or your rear yard equivalents. If they meet those requirements, and of course, keep in mind, these zoning regulations were written way back when. So DOB interprets accessory buildings or other structures for domestic or so those are DOB interpretations, and they have allowed a lot of different kind of containers and other uses as accessory. These storage containers are these spaces, tool sheds are very much accessory. I mean, the sharps is accessory, oxygen tank accessory, all of these. So I'm not at all questioning whether these are accessory and therefore should be, but temporary structures have not been counted towards floor area. We have seen that in the gasoline stations. They have not been. And in this case, the analysis shows even if we were to count these temporary sheds in the lot coverage, it still meets the lot coverage requirement because the site is a corner lot. And so other things. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, and it would be good if in our own files, something where we keep a recurring note of what are the things DOB has allowed in other cases that would be applicable rather than bringing it up. Thank you.
But thank you for that. But I just want to add that this is not a residential use or an agricultural use. And really what was meant was those little sheds, looks like a little tool shed that you have in your backyard. It's not meant to be essentially all of the elements of a building. But I think what the main issue is that the storage units that are there are many, and they're accessible, and they were open on Commissioner Shavetta's site visit. So open and accessible. And so that's part of it. And I'd say that rather than us determining the legality of the structures, that's really for Department of Buildings, who I don't think has been involved here. So I would like our compliance officer, Ted Ricketts, to please reach out to DOB and ask for an inspection of that side yard from DOB and from Department of Health, if you have access to that information.
I thought DOH does yearly inspection. Doesn't DOH do an yearly inspection? Isn't that what they had stated? Will there be one that will be coming up?
So I don't know, but the problem is that we're not being provided with the information of DOH inspections. We have no idea what they inspect. And what I know from inspectors and like Department of Building inspectors and so on, they inspect what you directed them to inspect. They don't necessarily inspect the other things. So what we'd want is a DOH inspection of the exterior portion, as opposed to them just running in the front door. And we would also want Department of Buildings inspection of that exterior portion. And we want that also. We also want the results of that in writing. So the DOB inspection should either be, well, we could have also the applicant submit a CCD1 or a ZRD1 to have a determination on what all of that stuff is. So it would both be determination from commissioner level, what is all that stuff in the side yard, and then from Department of Buildings as an inspection, is what's in the side yard actually legal? Because an inspection looks at different things than a code review or a zoning review. Okay, so the first is, Ted, please reach out to DOB, and if you have a contact with Department of Health, otherwise we'll work on how to get that. And then for the applicant to get a CCD1 or a ZRD1 about those units because there's no drawings that show them. It's sort of like they don't exist as far as DOB is concerned. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Ted has his hand up. Go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge, I will definitely contact DOB regarding the side yard inspection. That was it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're deferring this, Madam Chair?
So what we're going to do is we'll put it back on. It's a deferral, I guess, if you want to call it that. But what we're going to do is we'll put it back on the calendar for continued hearing.
Oh, so we're going to reopen it.
Not going to have a continued hearing here. I mean, I suppose.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Have to reopen it.
I
right?
think we need to reopen it to schedule.
Reopen it,
this.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's do that.
So a motion to reopen, Chair Perlmutter,
I like that background noise. It makes us think better.
Chair Perlmutter, motion to reopen?
I think she's lost.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Aye.
okay. Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
All right.
So we're reopening this case, okay.
So that I do want to add for the next hearing, because what we've been seeing up until we lit the fire, right? Zero response, basically one adjournment request after the next, where I simply denied the adjournments, and that's why we actually had hearings. And then the attorney appears and doesn't really have any answers. That cannot continue because there is a point of exhaustion, right? So the next hearing, we need to have the owner and maybe sort of like the facilities engineer and the council attend every single hearing. And by the next hearing, I want to see a fence up with a gate that prevents access to the side yard. And there's no excuse for not installing it between now and the next hearing. That prevents access by just anyone to the side yard. And it should also take into account the fact that there's that stoop that allows you to kind of walk up the steps of the little house next door and then like jump into the facility. So the fence has to wrap around to the little houses so that it's a completely contained enclosure. Okay, and so that's the direction to the applicant. Tell your client, we're just not going to be able to, we're not putting up with this anymore. And actually the result of it will be constant inspections, which will just cost you a lot of money. Okay. All right. Just give me a second to write.
Madam Chair, I think you also want the gates to have locks.
Yes, of course.
Yes, okay.
Completely enclosed with locks.
Yeah.
That are only accessible by people who are with the facility. Yes. Yeah. So owner and facilities manager must attend. And I'm going to end up scheduling this as soon as I can. So I know there's snow on the ground right now, but as soon as within a month, there should be ability to install a fence. So there's really no excuse for not doing that. We need to see physical progress. Otherwise, I think we'll be back here in this spot where we were from frustration last time very soon. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, next item is item number 10, 2020-61 BZ, 342, 346 East 104th Street, Manhattan.
Yes. So yeah, I think I saw I think I saw the required notes on the drawings. It's really a question for Tracy. Did you see everything you needed to see on the EAS?
Yes.
Okay. So let's make sure. Second. And I do want to point out, because it's been kind of a theme, we also asked this applicant to provide us with landscaping details. And if you want to see what a landscaping detail looks like when it's done by professionals who actually follow the instructions of the board and use skilled professionals to answer the question, their drawing, the last drawing submission P22 has a pretty spectacular detail. But as a warning to lazy applicants, you cannot use that detail for your situation because this is a very special type of planting bed. So I want to thank the architect and landscape architect on this project for having done such an excellent job in general, and their responsiveness, and wish them enormous luck with this project. So I'd like to make a motion to grant, and we do have some conditions, that lights have to be off at the rear terrace by 6 p.m., that there's to be no access to the little area at the rear that's described as, well, there's two parts to it. The area at the rear that's described as the maintenance area, and then there's that area on the terrace that is to be basically landscaped to hold people away from it for noise mitigation reasons. That they're to use no EFIS. The use of stucco is limited to application directly to the masonry, so not on some sort of EFIS material. And that the resolution should include DOT's expectations, which I'll read again, though I read it the last time. The EAS identifies improvement measures involving the modification of signal timing at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and East 105th Street. DOT has determined this improvement is feasible, and actual implementation will be determined upon field survey. Additional improvements include the reconstruction of the drop curb along East 104th Street frontage to full height curb and sidewalk, upgrading all the existing pedestrian ramps at the intersection of East 104th Street and 1st Avenue in accordance with ADA standards, and implementing no standing school days, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. signage along the East 104th Street frontage of the school building. Applicants should inform DOT 6 months prior to the completion and occupancy of the proposed project. So that's information that what I just read is from DOT's letter. So any questions from council before I go to a vote?
No, we've noted that. Thank you.
So then a motion to grant on those conditions.
Chair Promoter,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta,
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta.
Aye.
Item number 11, 2017-34BZ, 311 Adams Avenue, Staten Island.
So this is the thing you're never supposed to do. Change something that's assumed to be the case on the drawing on the day of the vote. So the building got taller. Oops, yeah, sorry. The building got taller in the last submission, and it can't do that. You can't change any of the dimensions in the submission from the close to the vote. And the reason that it matters anyway, you can't change any of the dimensions, but the entire premise of this was that the height of the building from grade to the peak was 35 feet, because it wasn't clear to me that you could measure from freeboard when you're not complying with all of the mitigation, height mitigation measures. So the application completely complied with that when it could go up to 30 feet plus the 5 feet from grade to freeboard was 35 feet. And the applicant just added a note making it higher than 30 feet from freeboard to the peak. You can't do that, but you also cannot change the drawings at the last minute. And so I have to say, we need to defer this. But I would say that if the app, because it's such a tiny change, if they can make the change today, we could vote on it tomorrow. So, but they have to submit the exact same drawing as what was, in terms of dimensions, as what was the case before we closed. And also, there had been an instruction to reduce the curb cut width to 10 feet, because that's what the requirement of 25-632 is. And then that would have allowed for planting in the front yard, which is one of the requirements of whatever, that one I didn't cite. But, and they didn't do that either. So it essentially, they were opening up the case for further discussion, which you're not supposed to do after we close. If you want to open it up for further discussion, we'll have to set another date and we'll have to continue the hearing. And I don't know if you really want to do that. So I'm sorry, but, or I'm not sorry, never change the drawings like that before the vote. Okay, so on we go, next one.
Okay, special order calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 12, 55137BZ, 23302 Northern Boulevard, Queens. This is still a review session, no public testimony.
So they did do some nice drainage drawings and included a trench drain. I think that the applicant's been very responsive. And it looks like the trench drain that runs along the entire frontage will handle the runoff and prevent flooding. They modified the never-ending story of the trash enclosure was modified to remove the planter. The only thing that needs to be added to the drawing is the dimensions of the bollards. So there's this property that's the bollard with chain. It just shows these little dots along the property line. It doesn't show how far away they are. We need that for future use. So the dimension needs to be the distance from the property line to the first bollard and the distances between the bollards. And then I asked about at the last hearing, and now I look at the site photos again. And there was no response, and I don't understand what this is. If you look at all of the photos that were submitted on 11/30, they show a slope of unmanaged, uncontained dirt along the eastern side lot line. It's just this continuous slope of unmanaged dirt. And I had asked before what that is, but they need to do something to contain it to something. Is it a planting bed? I actually don't know what it is. But the photographs, which were recent, show it's just a pile of dirt that runs along the entire thing. I called it a berm before, and the owner said, well, I don't know, there isn't any berm because it's just a big pile of dirt. You can see it in every photo on that 11/30 image. But otherwise, I'm okay with the application as long as council is good with the restrictive declaration, the last version of which was submitted November 23rd. I wrote 19, but it can't be right. 23rd, 2020, which must be the version that is executed and recorded prior to release of the resolution. So. And that declaration has to do with how many cars can be parked on the street, on the site and so on. And the business operations. Okay, Vice Chair Shonda.
I have no additional comments.
Okay. Commissioner Otley Brown.
No comments.
Commissioner Shetto.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to see the outcome of like the previous long hearings in this submission. I do have one request on, and I'm okay with the application as it is right now, but on drawing T-003.05, like they say when they do the recording in the movies, click hit 5th time, please. This charge is not measured by square feet, it's measured by something else. I'm tired of mentioning this, so I'm gonna ask them to take the calcs of the drawings, the calculations that says Q equals CIA until therefore okay on the drawing I mentioned and on the corresponding drawing for the upcoming application for the next case, take this part of the drawing off. I don't want somebody look at this drawing in the future, read this and says, who's this commissioner who looked at this and took it? I don't want that happen. I don't deserve that. So please take him off. I mentioned it 5 times before and I said fix them. Probably they don't know how to fix them. So we don't need them. We're good. Just take them off.
Because now you have drainage going by an actual person who knows how to do drainage. So you don't need that, right?
I don't know why they kept them. That's what I'm talking about. I just shared my screen. This, you see that?
The one that says proposed dry well.
The one that says from Q equals CIA, and then they calculate Q. It's 2/12 times point. I don't know what is that, but they say Q, which is the discharge, equal 495 square feet, and then proposed dry well is this. Just please take that out. We don't need them.
Remove the note.
Yeah.
Remove this whole note. Okay.
The nice thing is, if you look here on the first line, if you read, it says Q equals CIA, and the definition of Q is what? Cubic feet of intake area. So this is charge. It's cubic feet per whatever, per day, per year, per minute, per second. And then all of a sudden they forget that it's cubic feet. And now it's square feet. And like I said, painful as we mentioned this before 5 times, never been fixed. Take it out. And we're good. I'm good with it. Thank you.
Okay. It is frustrating to keep asking for something over and over and over and over and over and never get it. I know how you feel.
This is the least of the frustration you can get in an application like that contains engineering from some of the applicants. If all are like that, that would be beautiful. But in some other applications, you see amazing stuff. So the cure is easy here. Just delete them.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Shibeta.
Nothing further from me, Chair. Thank you.
Item number 13, 334, 78BZ, 233-20 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, so this was the same issues as with the prior application. The drainage plan was submitted. And then we need to make sure that the restrictive deck is recorded prior to our resolution being released, and the operational plan. Anything else, Vice Chair Shanda?
Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Commissioner Ali Brown?
No comments.
Commissioner Shetta?
Same as previous.
Okay. And Commissioner Shibeta?
Nothing further from me.
Okay.
Item number 14, 12295BZ, 15265 Rockaway Boulevard, Queens.
All right, just give me a second. Okay. As requested, a detailed sound study was done based on modeling of truck activity at the site, since there is presently no tenant, so they couldn't use actual activity, they had to model it. That was done on a January 14th submission. The modeling was based on the sound generated by one truck's maneuvering, but there will be many trucks working simultaneously at the site. I'd like the sound consultant, the noise consultant, to answer a bunch of these questions. How does the fact that there are many trucks operating at the site affect sound generation? For example, let's just say several trucks causing noises simultaneously, does that up the dBA of the sound or the other measurements of sound? It's stated in the study that backup warning signals will be prohibited at the site. So that's the beep, beep, beep when they're backing up, and whatever other kinds of things they're supposed to be doing that make noise, right? But I actually didn't understand that. Don't all trucks have these backup warning signals? And isn't that an essential safety feature for the workers who are walking around on the site, and cars that are, or other vehicles that are driving around on the site? Don't they need to hear that the truck is backing up from the truck dock or whatever? So again, I didn't understand that. Also, about what about horn blowing? Is that actually used as a way, sort of a signal among truckers to indicate anything? Those must be much louder impulsive sounds than what was provided with the hitching and the air brakes and so on. The simulation on page 9 of the study indicates that there are values up to 95 decibels related to air brakes and hitching. Someone needs to mute. Yeah, I'm going to mute Chief Daly because maybe he's the one who's coughing. Okay. It stated in this, the simulation on page 9 of the study indicates that there are values up to 95 decibels related to air brakes and hitching, which will not be mitigated by the acoustical barrier, showing exceedances of over 25 dBA in some instances. So I'd like to know what's to be done about that. That's a failure at 0.4 on the map, which is another residential property, and no wall is proposed there. No acoustical barrier is proposed there. It looks like the structure that backs up to the subject's property that's on that site may be living units, since there are dormers that face the house. Although the study doesn't state this, the statement of fact states, so the study doesn't state it, so the acoustical engineer actually didn't state this. The statement of fact states that putting up an acoustical wall to protect that site, the location number 4, would be inconvenient for operations, and posits that the existing situation with fence and trees adequately blocks noises. But I don't know what such a statement is based upon, because the acoustical study says actually that it reaches 95 decibels there. So, and the argument that there's an inconvenience presented to the loading dock if you were to build that acoustical barrier in that location is not borne out by the maneuverability diagram. So there really is no excuse but to install the same wall along that rear property line shared with the residential neighbor. I mean, I didn't understand the argument for not doing it, other than that you're claiming that the residential neighbor has a structure that's blocking the noise, but that's not so clear to me. And I don't think you should rely on it, because then it eliminates the possibility of using that site in any other way, because there's no barrier. Also, I'd like to know, how are the noise levels at the points shown determined? Where are the points actually? You know, there are sort of numbers floating in these properties, but where was it calculated that the sound is reduced to? So the wall is supposed to provide some sort of acoustical separation. how is it determined what the sound will be where? There wasn't any data on that. I'd like to know what is this, and shouldn't that data be taken at the residential property lines as opposed to sort of generally on the residents? Are you counting on some further reduction by distance? It should really be what's going on at the backyard, so that when I sit down with my chair at night to enjoy a drink, I'm not hearing the screeching of all of the trucks and so on. So, and what is the significance of the sound plan chart that indicates decibel levels of 97 to 112 for air brake and hitching? Why is there that figure on sound plan and not for the other figures? Also, how is the height of the acoustical barrier determined? There was no data provided about how you determined 20 feet was the magic height. And what about sound that's reflected off of the warehouse building? The warehouse building looks like it's about 40 feet high. Sound will be reflected off that. How far does that travel? How will that be mitigated? And what are the specifications on the acoustical barrier, and how was it determined it would accomplish the task? As far as I could see in the submission, there was no information about the barrier itself other than its name, and no calculations that show this barrier is good for mitigation of this attenuation of this much, therefore we get that much. And then the wall is proposed to be clad on the residential side with a metal trellis to support English ivy. This kind of superficially seems like a workable idea, but I would expect a restrictive declaration to commit the applicant to have a gardener maintain the ivy and to ensure it thrives. If neglected, which is easy, ivy actually just dies. It just dries up. And then you have this prison wall facing the residences, and it's even more of a prison because it's got bars on it now, right? There is also the issue of vermin, which is a little running theme of ours, that must be addressed, since there will be this lovely and hospitable 5-foot wide undisturbed path, like a kind of like a runway to nest in, and the easiest route of egress will be the residences. So it won't be possible to go onto the truck yard because the instructions are that the acoustical barrier has to go to the ground unless they burrow underneath. But the easiest route of egress will be the residential properties. And I note once more that the landscaping that's proposed has not been designed by a landscape architect. And since this is an unusual application, I really want to be sure it has been reviewed by a landscape architect. So please provide confirmation from an actual landscape architect that this proposal will work. For example, one of the walls faces due north, and the 5-foot strip, which is on the north side of the wall, will be shaded by the wall, which may also, by the way, it's 20-foot high wall, may have a deleterious effect on the existing vegetation on the residential property that we've been admiring. That may be one reason I want to say that we have side yard and rear yard regulations to allow the vegetation to thrive in and breathe and receive sunlight. So we're talking about building a 20-foot wall right up against the property line, which may be shading adjacent properties detrimentally. And to get a sense of the impact that this wall will have, there's a Google satellite image that shows a semi-trailer parked along the property line. So if you were to go to satellite imagery right now, you swing around to look at the property, you'll see a semi parked right on that L that's north facing. According to my research, a semi is 14 feet high. So the wall will be another half that height. So it's going to be very tall. So needless to say, I'm pretty nervous about this proposal. And to sort of assuage my nervosity, my anxiety. At the land, I want to just suggest this because it's not an expensive thing to do. At the Landmarks Commission, the applicants for visible alterations to existing buildings are required to install frame mock-ups at the site using scaffolding or 2x4s and tarps that cover them, so that the commission can go visit the site and actually see how high, what that is, and will it be visible, and will it be appropriate to the landmark. So I think if the applicant did that, you can install it with metal scaffolding, the kind you use, those little, it's just a simple kind of metal structure. You can install that and hang tarps from it. It will alert the neighbors to what may be coming. And it will also help better inform the board what we're actually talking about. Also, the landscape drawing, because it's not prepared by a landscape architect, contradicts itself with respect to the planting in the bed along Rockaway Boulevard. It notes English ivy is to be planted there, but the key letter is K for inkberry. And there is a direction to not plant inkberry and English ivy in the same planting bed. So basically, if I don't know what to do, it tells me don't plant whatever it is it's telling me to plant. They need to clarify on the landscape plan which side of the fence the English ivy is to be planted along 132nd Street Avenue. That's on the landscape plan. There is another drawing elsewhere that indicates that the fence is on the, I think it's on the far side. But anyway, they need to clarify it on the landscape drawing. The noise memo was sent to DEP for their review as well. And we understood that, and in terms of lighting, we understood that lighting would be mounted to the 20-foot high wall. The drawings show a floodlight on a 22-foot, several of them, on a 22-foot high pole. So I'm not getting why we're still discussing this. The light has to be lower than the wall to completely shield the light source. Even the lumen spread diagram is showing that the light is penetrating over the walls. I just don't even understand why we're still having a conversation about this. The light has to be lower than the wall. DOT also had many comments that the applicant should respond to. And of special note is their concern, and their comments were just from January 15th. Of special note is their concern about the ramp egress onto Rockaway Boulevard, which I'll read. The ramp from the cellar level, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The ramp from the cellar level connects to Rockaway Boulevard immediately adjacent to the driveway serving the parking lot on the ground floor level, resulting in closely spaced vehicle turning conflicts on Rockaway Boulevard. The ramp also terminates on Rockaway Boulevard less than 7 feet from the existing street tree. We would recommend an alternative access arrangement whereby the ramp terminates in the parking lot within the site, which I think is the lot that we're discussing right now, rather than on Rockaway Boulevard. This reduces the number of vehicular turning conflicts on Rockaway Boulevard, including those across the sidewalk. Please note that unused curb cut should be restored to full height curb and sidewalk. So if I'm understanding what DOT is saying, even more trucks than were discussed previously are being encouraged to go into the parking lot. So the frequency of truck activity all being there simultaneously will increase, assuming that what DOT is requesting is physically doable.
Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
We did have a call with DOT on Thursday to discuss these comments with the applicant, and the applicant was going to look into the ramp issue further.
Thank you. Vice Chair Shanda?
Sorry, I'm just trying to locate my notes. Okay. So with regards to the noise analysis that was done, What I gather is that the expected noise level will be at 76 dBA at the rear lot line of lot number 13, which is above the New York City limit, but will drop by will drop below the New York City limit in the backyard. If the sound barrier is located along the lot line, when this goes back to the question of the applicant saying placing a sound wall along that building that's on lot 13, which is the number 4 and number 5 demarcated in the acoustical plan. Maneuverability affected. Going back to the comment that you have raised, Madam Chair, are they saying the acoustical wall with the landscaping or just the acoustical wall? Because I think just the acoustical wall here would be adequate, but maybe acoustical wall with the landscaping may affect the maneuverability. In this case, I think just the acoustical wall should be sufficient because there's a building behind it. And if the garage is being used as a residential, that's not part of our review. That's probably not legal, but that's a different matter. So I would like the applicant to clarify when they were talking about the infeasibility of the maneuverability, was it factoring in just the acoustical wall at that location, or that is point number 4 per the acoustical analysis document, or it was the landscaping, 5-foot landscaping and the acoustical wall. I think just the acoustical wall would be sufficient and should not affect the maneuverability plan. So I would like a clarification on that. With regards to the, the landscaping that has been proposed, the existing building that is there, it is a very high building. It's a 20-foot high building at the rear lot line, and it basically runs the length of 9 lots. And when you look at the photographs and from the site visit that I'd done during summer at least, there was quite a bit of ivy that is growing along that rear lot line. So assuming that this has grown pretty much, I don't know how much care has been gone, but I'm not taking that out of our plate. If that's the kind of ivy that is going to be grown, I think it should survive, but definitely, yes, the landscape architect should confirm that and ensure a management plan is provided to the commission that maintains the landscaping along that 5-foot strip along the wall height. With regards to the wall height, yes, I would like the acoustical engineer clarify how they arrived at the 20-foot mark. It would be helpful if they can provide a simple visual, I was thinking maybe an elevation that shows where the wall is, where the sound is coming from, and how the 20-foot high wall would block the sound and based on the surrounding house, not just the backyard, but also the second floor of the houses. So I think that would, at least that would confirm my concern. And that's a very easy way to kind of show how noise dissipates and how then they're arriving at the 20-foot wall height.
So not an elevation, a section from the.
Sorry. Yes, you're right. Yeah, a sectional elevation that kind of shows that. I think that would help, especially with regards to the lot that is on 132nd Street, because that is most impacted, and I think then the lot number 13, which doesn't have the acoustical wall, but
which
yeah. Should. I think without the landscaping, that acoustical wall be fine, and it would very much blend in with the rest of the wall that is along the rear lot line of all of these properties, which is a 20-foot high wall where nature has taken over.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, so I think those are my comments. I know we have gone back and forth with what is the appropriate height. I'm okay with the 20-foot height, partly because, not because it's existing, but I think it will, it doesn't cast that much of a shadow when I'm looking at the aerial views in the yard, and if when planted and taken proper care, I don't think it would be much of an issue.
But wait a second, that wall is an east-facing wall, so, you know, sun rises in the east kind of thing, right? It's not going to cast as much shadow because it's in actual sunlight, whereas a north-facing wall casts shadow. Right?
So the only one that would be of an issue would be the lot that is on the 2 lots on 132nd. So maybe a shadow analysis would be helpful. But in that case, would the lowering of the wall work? The noise, I think those are the 2 things that maybe they can help diagrammatically help us to understand.
Okay, Commissioner Ali Brown.
I would be okay with the 20-foot acoustic wall, provided that they are very good at managing the growth of the ivy and making sure it stays healthy. Because if it does grow lush, then it won't really feel like there's this big ugly wall in your backyard that's almost like a prison wall. But the key is to ensure that the landscaping is actually cultivated so that it grows lush and covers, you know, the cement or concrete block that it's going to be made with. I just had one question about the lumen diagram, because the statement said the lighting in the yard will be installed in the acoustic wall, I thought 2 feet from the top, and will face inwards towards the parking lot. That to me, I interpreted that to mean it would be somewhat like 18 feet high and affixed to the wall. But then when I looked at the plan, I just saw lighting that was at 22 feet high. Didn't even seem like it was affixed to the wall. So if they could just clarify that for me, that would be helpful.
Okay. Commissioner Shaitan.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank them for the acoustical study. This is one of the the limited times that I can see something that's really engineered, presented to us. It's well engineered. However, I do have some concerns when looking at the table that they provided in the study, the table that summarizes the locations. This is table 1-6. It summarizes the events, the truck events, such as the brake, just the blow in the engine, the air brakes, the truck hitch. It summarized these events at different locations, the impact of these events at different locations versus the ambient noise levels, the expected noise levels, and the New York City limits. My imagination for a study like this during the last hearing, and I did mention this superficially, is the task here is to do something very analogous to the white paper that we get during the menu board analysis for drive-thrus. Meaning that you have an event, which is menu board. In the case of a drive-thru, it's just one event. It's a menu board. Somebody's talking at different noise level. Here, it's a bit more complicated. You have a truck, but you have different events. Somebody could blow the gas pedal. So it could be a brake. It could be a honk. So we have different events. And before all of that, we have ambient noise levels that could be measured, and they did that. And then they should have moved to these events one by one. And they should have studied the propagation of the sound wave from the truck moving far from the truck. For me, it doesn't matter whether they measured at location 1 or location 5. They could have done this even at a different, no, not a different job site, because they needed to measure the ambient. But they could have done this like in the middle of that parking lot and put the truck in, put the brakes, and then measure 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. You have to measure at multiple points horizontally. And you have to measure at multiple directions because sound propagates in a direction and then it propagates like in an angle to that. So if you have a menu board and it's facing a property line, the sound wave will go in that direction perpendicular to that property line. Is going to be very strong. But at a shifted angle from that, at let's say 30 degrees, it's going to be less. 40 degrees, it's going to be less. 90 degrees, it's going to be much less. And if you go in the opposite, probably you're not going to hear it. Same thing here. They should have done this at different distances and in the main direction of that wave propagation or sound wave propagation, and like at 2 or 3 angles. And then at even 2 or 3 heights, like at 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet. And by doing that, they're gonna have like a contour line, like a plan and section. They're gonna have an idea about how this sound wave in this kind of environment travel vertically and horizontally. And then they could have applied this to location 1, 2, 3, 10, whatever. And then by doing that kind of analysis, see at what height the wave that's gonna hit a specific location, the amount of noise is gonna be what? And then at the height that they believe the wave intensity is gonna be dropped significantly to the limit that they don't need the barrier. Let's say they wanna filter in or out of that barrier 20, and the incident wave is, let's say 90, like they said, and the filter capacity of that barrier is 50. 90 minus 50 is 40, they need 20, no, that's not good. Let's extend it more, let's extend it more, until they hit that height where the incident, let's say, is 70, and the filtering is 50, then the filter is just 20, then we're good, let's stop here. And this is 25 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet. I don't care whether it's 20 or 30 or 20 or 10, but I haven't seen that in their analysis. Probably they have done it, but they didn't mention it. That my understanding, and again, I'm not a sound engineer, but I studied physics. That when there is a rule that governs the sound wave propagation, there is something called the double distance and the 6 dB reduction rule. But my understanding to this is it is in the main direction of the wave propagation, meaning that if you have a source that's emitting 100 and you double that at 2 feet. If you go to at 4 feet, it's gonna be 100 minus 6. If you go to at 8 feet, it's gonna be 100 minus 6 minus another 6. If you go at 16 feet, it's you can take another 6 decibels out. This rule, as far as I understand, is just horizontal, and it's in the main direction. They call it the axis direction of the wave, but perpendicular to that, I'm not sure what kind of rule they used, and I have concerns regarding the height of the fence, and I'm not saying it could be like less than it should. It might be taller than it should, but when you don't have the criteria, you cannot tell. And so far, I don't know the criteria, so I need them to explain to us how did they get to the height of the fence. But at the end, I want to thank them again for the study. It's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Commissioner Shibeta.
Thank you. Don't want to be repetitive. I have the same concerns with lighting and with sound. I do appreciate the covering of the ivy on the residential side. I hope that we can get a landscape architect and something in their operational plan that shows that this is going to be continually maintained, so that and I would also like that some statement that we're not just going to be planting small seeds in the beginning and hoping it's going to grow out eventually. I'd like to make sure that there's going to be a large onset of this ivy in the beginning that completely covers this wall, so that they don't have to wait a few years to get some relief from it.
Yeah, because ivy is actually something where you just get it in small pots and then you try to train it around the trellis and it doesn't really start to pick up for a while. So it's going to look pretty sketchy no matter what for the first, I'd say, 3 years. So assuming it takes off. So
Right.
It also has to be planted in the ground, right? So they planted it, whatever it is, 6-inch intervals, and then they trail it up, and they can only trail it up maybe 2-3 feet, nowhere near the 20 feet. So this is
Yeah, I would like something that's going to address the immediate future. Otherwise, it's going to look, as said, it's going to look like Alcatraz. You see ivy climbing up those walls too.
right. That's a good point. Okay, Commissioner Shetta has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to mention that going through the noise study, I haven't seen that they factored in the landscape and noise reduction, and it shouldn't be factored in. So if this is what they've done, that's a good thing. They didn't play games here, but the landscape shouldn't be factored in looking at the noise reduction issues. It's just the acoustical barrier, and that's all.
Okay, and I just want to, with respect to your comments before about the measurement, you know, it's possible there'll be like 20, 30 trucks on site. So driving all in different places. So the propagation analysis really has to test based on what you said. If there's an analysis that shows kind of how the sound radiates from that truck, then you need to move the truck around the site, because it's not only in one spot, it's in many spots all around the site.
You don't need to move it. You can keep the truck. That's my point. You can keep the truck at a specific spot, but you move the monitoring location. You monitor at 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet, and then you monitor along the axis of the truck, and then 20 degree to that, 40 degree to that, 90 degree to that. And then you go to the back, and then you monitor when you hung, you push the pedal, the gas pedal, when you push the brake. You monitor at different events, different distances along axis, different angles horizontally, like radial around,
Right.
and then different angles vertically even, like at 2 feet, 4 feet, 6. If you do that, you're gonna have like a theory for how this, you're gonna construct something that's truck specific, very similar to the chart we get from the menu board manufacturer for a specific menu.
Right.
You know that contour chart with the circles, with the distances, with the angles? You're gonna build something. If you do, I would urge that sound engineer who's gonna do that, he can even publish something out of it if he's interested.
All right, thank you. We need to move on. It's a long discussion with this. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one.
Next item is item 15, 20768 BZ, 115-58 Dunkirk Street, Queens.
Okay. Sorry, scrolling again. So in that kind of theme of, you know, responsive versus non-responsive applicants to the instructions of the board, I want to commend this applicant for actually responding and providing what we've directed them to provide. So we received updated drawings with good planting information, and it included a very good planting bed detail. They were able to figure out how to do it, so I don't know why other applicants need the BSA to show them how to do it. It's just this kind of running theme for me, okay? So they also have a proposal to try and maintain open storage in the rear and parking along the side lot line, which has been kind of a theme with this case, where we have this problem with the open storage in the side. We were supposed to see photos of some site improvement with respect to cleanup and replace broken fencing, wooded area, which we didn't receive. Sorry, I'm going to mute Commissioner. Okay. We didn't receive, we were supposed to see that area in the wooded area cleaned up, and we didn't get any photos on that. Also, we were supposed to get a survey and corrected drawings to reflect the survey, since it was stated by the applicant. I mean, we didn't discover it. It was stated by the applicant at the hearing that the site plan is inaccurate. It's not an accurate representation of actual site conditions. If that's not the case, then we don't need that, but that's what we were told at the last hearing. And we were also supposed to get an operational plan to explain how they would keep the side area free of open storage. There is a statement in the cover letter, which maybe that's the operational plan, but it's not really clear. I see Daryl's hand up, just a second. We were supposed to get this operational plan, and the cover letter says that they'll use the backyard, that area that used to have that sort of lean-to, for the open storage, and they'll stripe the side yard, and they'll put a sign up that says no open storage. But maybe we need more of an operational plan, because all they need to do is start putting pallets down in the side yard, and that's the end of the parking there. Daryl, go ahead.
Okay, so the applicant, I sent additional comments to the applicant about the operational plan. They said that that was the statement of facts. That was the operational plan. And I asked about current photos for the current condition. They said they provided photos prior to the last hearing, and were planning to provide additional photos of the current conditions of this site once all the work was completed. That was their response. This was on January 29th.
Okay.
And I also asked about site missing information about the owner of the heavily wooded area. They respond, according to the property owner, he owns that area as shown on the site plan. We will provide a survey of the property if available. He is looking for it.
Oh.
That was the last of that.
Yeah, thank you. I think we learned at the last hearing that the subject owner owns that wooded area. And so that's when we said there's these broken fences and it's a mess and you should clean it up. So that's why I expected to see photographs of them having fixed the fence and cleaned it up. But there's also landscaping and stuff that needs to be done. I sort of understand that, but we're always trying to maintain sites, and to the extent that you can clean something up right away, you should always clean something up right away. Okay, so let me just finish my comments. The landscaping and curbing actually does have to be installed, of course, and that can't be done until like April. And looking at the weather, I'm not sure that April's the end of the freeze cycle yet. And I had, and one idea with this is, what if because we said we would give them a short leash. One idea would be to give them a 1-year leash where they install, instead of waiting until April for them to install everything and so on. One idea is to give them a 1-year leash to install all of the landscaping and clean up that wooded area and so on. But it would also be a way to test whether they hold their promise to keep that side yard free of open storage. Yeah, so, and because the last time we talked about this, we said you need to create an enclosure in that side yard, and that's where the storage would be. And if you need to park cars I don't even know if it's allowed, but you would park cars inside that open storage area, or maybe create something that would shield the parking area from the public so that you don't actually see, like they drive through and something goes on in the backyard or something. I don't know. So that was what we discussed at the last hearing. And then they said, no, we need to keep that area open for parking, which may not be a solution. So I'll go around the room. So Vice Chair Shanda.
Thank you. At the last hearing, the applicant had stated that to ensure that the side lot will not be used for storage, they could use the rear yard where they did have a temporary structure which was taken down to use for storage, and that it is accessible. And for that reason, they had said that, yes, it is accessible, one can maneuver it and go to, and I think that's where the survey came up, because they know that it is accessible. The drawings were not showing it. So I think what the applicant has said is that, well, in lieu of the survey, the applicant is saying that the rear yard is accessible and it is going to be used by the tenant, the main primary tenant, and basically items will be taken all the way to the rear using a forklift through the building into the rear yard. And that's what they have shown in the diagram. And that is pretty isolated from the rest of the residential area because it only abuts the LIRR, and then it's the wooded area. There really isn't any other lot line that would have a residential use. Rest is all commercial. I still would like to just, if they do have the survey and if there is a direct line of connection, okay. But I think the solution of providing access from the building to the rear is better because it further ensures that there wouldn't be any vehicles going up and back and forth through the side yard to the rear to store the store goods. And oh, by the way, it's backed up, so let me just store something temporarily on this parking area, and once one of the items are moved, I can move it back there. So this prevents any possibility of that side yard being used for anything other than just parking. So I am okay with the idea of having the access to the rear as a storage area through the building only and not from the side yard. And the side yard is only for the landscaping that provides buffer and parking of employee and visitors vehicles. And the plan shows only one sign will be posted that is right at the entrance gate. I think there should be more than one sign, and these signs should be posted at each entry doorways from the parking lot into the building, indicating that no employees, everybody's aware that there cannot be any storage of any vehicle, any material other than just visitors and employee parking on the side yard. Those and I think the operational plan should, I don't know if it's possible to record it or it should be there in the lease if they can show us that document. And I don't know when the lease runs out. So if we are giving them 1 year, would that work enough with the lease and how that is tied in? So maybe, so I would like to understand that. That's all.
I just want to point out, though, in terms of the storage, that they used to have all of this stuff in the back before. And you can look at the aerial imagery, the satellite imagery, and it's storing in the back and on the side. So, the reality is workers do things that are comfy, right? The most comfortable thing for themselves, the most expedient thing. And when the truck comes in and it offloads, it's easier to just offload right there. And in fact, there is something known as FOB. It's like the truck comes in and then they just drop it on the sidewalk, and that's it. And so the closest thing to the sidewalk is that parking area and not in the back. So that's the question, is how does the building owner and then the tenant enforce moving that stuff immediately into the building?
Right, Madam Chair, you're absolutely right. And that is one of the reasons why I really would not want to see the side yard again being reused as a way to take the goods from the curb cut through the side yard into the backyard. Rather, should be through the building. That way, you make sure if they are storing stuff, they're dropping stuff for the sense of efficiency, it's all within the building and not outside.
Right.
And that needs to be made amply clear to the tenant, and the tenant needs to, I don't know if addendum could be added to the lease before the lease is up, for the tenant to be fully aware that it is going to be implemented, and it needs to be carried out from now onwards, not before the lease is up, not after the lease is up. Because the tenant owner needs to have some teeth with the tenant also, and the tenant needs to be made aware of it.
Right.
Because they may have signed a contract based on a different understanding.
Right. The only thing is every lease says you need to comply with the law. And at the moment, complying with the law. So that's the landlord needs. You're not complying with the law. Get it out of there. That's how we've had the opportunity to force landlords in gas stations and so on, repair stations, to actually do something, because it's against the law, and they can force their tenants to do it that way. Yeah. Anyway, Commissioner Brown.
So the suggestion to put a covered structure in that side yard arose from the fact that I was doing field visits and happened to pass by this site and saw that even in the middle of hearing, they couldn't manage to keep the side yard clear of storage. And so because of that, I'm very skeptical of their ability to actually go through with keeping that side yard free of storage, even if they have the ability to use the rear yard as open storage. And I'm thoroughly supportive of the rear yard being used as open storage. But I don't even know if it's going to be effective to have signage anywhere, because to me, that was an operational decision by the lessors of the property. And so I'm not sure how we can control it other than having a compliance officer make regular visits. And I'm not even sure whether or not that's actually something that can be done, because the compliance officer is busy taking care of other sites and ensuring that they comply. So all that to say, if they want to try and give this a go without creating a structure, I would be supportive of there being a very short leash. And if at any time the compliance officer goes out there and finds that the side yard has any storage, we bring them back on the calendar and deny it, or something like that, or force them to build a structure in that side yard. Otherwise, I don't think that they're going to comply long term, because they can't even do it during the hearing.
Fair. Thank you. I mean, it might be easier to just get the structure filed now, because it's going to need permits, it's going to need foundations, et cetera. You like get it filed now, and that way they could submit it to us for approval. And we could say, yes, with respect to the variance, we're approving this because for operational reasons, they need this, whatever type of a structure it is. You know, in the end, it's kind of like a lean-to thing, I guess.
Right. But they should also be aware that we drive by these sites incidentally, not even with these sites being the target, but as we're going to other sites, we pass sites that are either in hearing or have just been granted. And if they look at the history of the board, we're very clear that when we find something that is egregious or not in compliance, we bring them back in. And so they should be forewarned.
Thank you. Commissioner Shibeta.
I think you want to do Commissioner Sheta first.
Sorry, Shibeta. Sorry, it comes. They're so similar. Okay.
I told them when I came into this country, I told them don't use that last name, and they did.
Really? Oh, we had
I was predicting the future. I do have another last name, but it's not in use.
Sometimes I'm confused because you have an email that has the other name. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to like add too much, but I'm afraid that even if they build the structure, I don't think applying for a permit for the new structure and even building the foundation is a guarantee. I believe the real guarantee here is the applicant understands that we are willing to help them, provided that they are willing not to impose negative impacts on the neighbors and the adjacent properties. This is very important. They could, it's possible, very likely to see this. They build the structure in the back to use it for storage, and then they use it, consume it, and then they put stuff in the side yard.
Right.
I believe the applicant has to understand that if they don't play with rules, we have no other way than denying this application. And I don't want this case to end that way, especially during these difficult times.
Mhm. Okay, just to be clear, my understanding is they're not going to build a structure in the rear. The structure, there was a lean-to in the rear that was taken down. It was this mess of a thing. Now what the proposal is to just store materials in the rear in the open air, the way they store materials in the side, right? But what we were talking about is building a structure in the side, because it seems inevitable that they will use the side, and it's in an open air and it's supposed to be in an enclosed structure when you store materials. So we're kind of talking about two different things. But
aren't we talking about the back of the lot to the left, right?
yeah, so at the rear of the site is where the open storage is going to be located. That's a good idea, right? There was open storage there before, but there was a lean-to over it, so you couldn't see what they were storing, right?
Yeah.
The issue is disbelief that they'll only use the rear for open storage. More likely, they'll use both the rear and the side for open storage. Yeah. And so if business operation is such that the side always ends up having open storage, because as Commissioner Otley Brown said, even when they're supposed to be on good behavior, they can't do it, then maybe the better pursuit is that they file plans now under because they're not be able to do it unless we granted the right to do it, right? They file now to build some sort of a structure in the side, which will accommodate enclosed storage, plus some kind of idea for parking, right? So that you drive inside to park, or there's a lean-to or something like that, park for the parking. I don't know, I don't have a design solution yet, but something that conceals all of those activities, because there is a residential neighborhood across the street.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone walks home from whatever, and that's what they see, piles and piles of commercial storage, right? So that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Shibata. Now Shibata. Maybe you should change your last name. That would make it easier on Commissioner Sheta.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'll look into it. So I was okay with putting this on a short leash and having the compliance officer make random stops to see if they're complying. I do like the idea of Commissioner Otley Brown with the creating a structure on the side. My concern would only be that putting another structure on the side may not be visually pleasant to the residents on that side. So some sort of landscaping around that structure or something along those lines, and not have just another eyesore on those residents. Now, granted, it's much better than the conditions that were most, but I want to be sure that it's not we're making the situation much better, as opposed to them not being worried that they're not going to comply.
Right. Okay. Good idea. Thank you. Right. They're already landscaping the front. So they would continue of the building. So they could continue the landscaping along this portion and then have the structure right behind it, some reasonable distance. Yeah, Jella has her hand up unless you didn't mean to. Go ahead, Jella.
Sorry, I actually wanted to say something at the end. I thought this was the end, but there's one more case, so sorry.
Oh, at the end. Oh, okay. All right, go ahead. All right, anybody else? Anything last minute on this one? Okay, let's go to the next.
Sorry. New case, item number 16, 59976BZ, 7202 72nd Place, Queens.
We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community board recommends approval. Notification to neighbors isn't required of an extension of term, but I'm questioning perhaps they should be notifying the immediate neighbors in this particular case. The continuous use proof is a Google Street View image from 2017 and 2018 that show the business name FM on the facade, and the term expired in 2016. I think that's enough, but I always leave that to Commissioner Otley Brown to sign off. The operational plan states that trash is collected every weekday at 1 a.m. from the side yard. That would be quite disturbing to me. I'm not sure why it's being picked up at 1 a.m. I know carting services always work at really terrible hours, but I'm curious about that. I'm also not understanding the sequence of the trash storage versus the relocation for collection. Does the trash stay? I just didn't really understand the explanation. Does the trash stay in the shed that faces Edsel the entire time until pickup, or is there another trash area inside the building and then before pickup it's brought out to that trash storage shed that faces Edsel? Also, what's going on in the alleyways? We need photos, and this is a request to all of our project managers, please, and of course the applicant community. We always ask for this at the hearing, so why not ask for it in the notice of comments, and as an applicant voluntarily provide it without being asked. We always ask for photographs of the perimeter of the lot as opposed to only photographs taken from the street. Perimeters of the lot where you're facing the property line and you walk around and you take consecutive pictures, and then you turn around and you take photographs inside the lot looking at the structures. This way I wouldn't have to ask the question, what's happening inside the alleyways? So we need those photos of the perimeters along both alleys, looking at the property line and back at the building, because we want to see the conditions of the fence and the brick wall, because a lot of the times we look at these extensions of time and or term, and we see that the perimeter conditions are really in need of attention. And yes, unlike what's stated in the materials that were submitted, we do need meter readings on a lumen spread diagram because the lights when on may disturb the neighbors. Motion sensitive lights often are activated by birds. In fact, a lot of people give up on those motion sensitive lights because they're flashing all the time. Every time a bird or a squirrel jumps by, they go on, which could really be annoying. And also, if the hours of operation are strictly daylight hours and the building mounted floods are for security only, then light shields should be installed to focus the light onto the property only. So because they're general floods, you can see that really lights it up if a squirrel jumps by, if they're motion detectors. Also, I didn't see any, is there lighting in the 10-foot wide alley? There were also many conditions on the prior approvals, and we didn't have any information on how the site complies with the conditions. I'm just going to kind of read off the conditions were from the 1976 approval, from the 1992 approval, and the 2016 approval. Each approval said the conditions of the prior approval stand unless superseded. So they weren't superseded. So you need to go through each one of the conditions and explain how the current site complies with those conditions. The photos that were provided of the exterior of the building show the stucco of the building failing along the sidewalls. It needs to be repaired and painted uniform, and not just a little patching repair because it looks terrible. It means painting the entire side of the building. And the sidewall also facing the 10-foot alley, and which is visible to the neighbors, is in really bad shape and needs to be painted consistently. That's also the case for the roll-up gate enclosure on Edsel. There's the gate itself is all buckled and rusted. It needs to be repaired and painted. And those are my comments. Commissioner, Vice Chair Shamba. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm
Unmute.
sorry. Thank you. I had similar comments with regards to the lumen count study and also the trash pickup. With regards to the lumen count, and especially with, and that should be reflected in the drawings, the lights need to be clearly, much more clearly. Hello?
Someone needs to mute.
Okay, the light fixtures mounted on the building needs to be more clearly indicated. And I think through the lumen study, we will have a better understanding of which one of these elements are lighting structures or otherwise. So that would be helpful. So those were my two primary comments on this project.
What's about the trash?
The trash pickup hours, I would like a clarification, and that's about it.
Commissioner Lee Brown.
So as to your question of the proof of continuous use, I guess if their time of filing was less than 2 years from the last photo, which is June 2018, then I would be fine with leaving it like that.
Okay.
And I really have no major comments, except that to me, the photos of the exterior looks as if it should have an extra repainting to kind of blend everything in. And it would be helpful if we had some photos, actual photos of what's going on in the alley and the side yards.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you. I'm just on the continuous proof. You said as long as, I missed the.
Oh, when it was filed, when this case was filed with us, is that less than 2 years from June 2018?
Ah, okay. Sorry.
Because to today, it's 2.5 years from June 2018.
Right.
But if it was filed like in April or March, then it's under 2 years, then I would be okay with letting it go.
Okay. I just lost it. It was filed on March 16th, 2020.
Yeah, then I would be okay. Because then that's like 1.5 years.
Okay. Okay, photos of alley. Thank you very much. Commissioner Shetta.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the lumen spread, I'm not sure if we've seen the pictures for the lighting units that were submitted recently, like before the weekend. I believe they should do some measurements, and it shouldn't be like extensive like a gas station. It should be very straightforward. Just go there, put the lights off, measure the ambient, and then put them on and measure. I would say go to the location of the light, perpendicular to the fence, go to the fence at the property line, take a measurement, and if this is something like significant, if it's less than, let's say, 0.1 or so, then you need to put shielding. If there is no difference between before and after, then you're okay. But it should be very quick. It shouldn't, a site like this, it shouldn't take like more than probably an hour to do the measurements. But I believe they need to be done. They should be done. regarding the other thing is when you look from the street, you're not going to be able to see what is inside in these side yards, in the alleys on the side. So I tried, but I couldn't. The only thing I was able to see is some of the lights, but nothing beyond that. So we need to get more photos showing the activity, or if there is no activity, like proving that. And that's all of my comments. Thank you.
So I just want to clarify with the measurement of the lumen spread at the fence, it should be at several heights. We're trying to go up to the top of the fence so that
I care about the top. I care about the top of the fence.
Yes.
And probably like mid height, and then at ground. And you're gonna have an understanding from 3 points how it goes up as far as you go up from the existing grade.
From the
and
fence.
If there is a window, you go ahead.
From the fence, grade, mid, top. Okay.
Yeah, three, and it should be, let's say they have 3 lighting units in that alleyway. Go to the first one, go to the point like on the fence, take 1 on the ground, 1 mid-height, 1 at the top, and then move to the next, and then move to the next. And the measurements should be taken twice. Before you put the lights on, put the lights off, take measurements, so you're gonna see what is coming from anything else, and then put the lights on and get the new measurement. And from both, you can get the difference, and you understand how much is coming from your lights. And if that much coming is more than 0 theoretically, then you need to put shielding. If I would say if you measure before and you get 3, and after and you get 3.05, I wouldn't say this is a big deal. But if you measure before and it's 5, and then after and you get 6.5, then you need to put shielding.
Right. Okay. Great. Commissioners, thank you. Commissioner Shabetto.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are limited to that the applicant must be more courteous to its neighbors. I believe that this does need a fresh coat of paint. I believe that the roller gate needs to be cleaned up. The site needs to be cleaned up generally. I second the statements about the lumen spread. The trash pickup, I read it to say that it's every day at 1 a.m. That, I don't think that's sustainable. That's got to be a great nuisance to the people that live around there. So something should be done about that. That I just can't imagine the noise that would create in its surroundings. My refuse is collected twice a week, and they do it in the early morning. But at least it's only twice a week. Something should be addressed.
Right. Okay. Or another option is not sure whether there's a difference in exposure between Edsel and the other side in terms of residents. But one of the conditions of approval was that everything was supposed to be happening on the Edsel side. And so I don't know whether, obviously the trash is on the Edsel side, but I don't know if it's a more annoying side than the other in terms of the residential impact. But it says the 76 approval says shipping and receiving shall be limited to the Edsel side. Ditto for employee parking, which doesn't seem to be the case. And right, so I'm not sure that they're in compliance with the terms of the grant. That's why I say, and if they aren't, then they need to explain why they need to modify their actions. Go ahead, Vice Chair Shanda.
Yeah, I mean, Edsel is the major thoroughfare. So having all the deliveries pick up, even trash pickup on Etzel is a better solution than 72nd Place, which is a narrow street, one way, and it is primarily a residential street. So I personally would prefer to see all the delivery pickup, even trash pickups, all of that happening on Etzel rather than off 72nd Place.
Okay. Which is what the 19
Exactly.
board said.
Right. And if you look at the uses along Etzel, it is on the other side of Etzel Avenue. It's manufacturing. So you do have manufacturing uses along that. So they're also having probably similar pickup delivery. So it should be along that same travel path and keeping that use and circulation to Etzel and not bringing it on to 72nd Place.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sheta.
They do have a wet sprinkler in the building, and they said it's connected to a central station. Do we need fire department on this application?
We always ask fire department to check that everything is up to date. So yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, I think that's, Commissioner, oh no, we did that already. Okay, we got Commissioner Shabeta this time.
We
Jella.
wanted,
Jella
we
has her
wanted
hand
to
up.
ask if you could chat about Adams Avenue. Jella?
Oh,
Hi. Item number 11, 2017-34-BZ, 311 Adams Avenue, Staten Island. That was a decision item. It's closed, but you indicated you couldn't vote on it because you had comments about the height, that you thought there was a change in height, and you had a comment about the code cut. I received some information from the applicant about this, and I can share with you some of the information, but also they wanted to know if you wanted to reopen it. You had indicated maybe you would reopen it.
Okay. So it's 12 o'clock. I don't know that we're going to be able to get to Adams this morning because we have a lot of cases. So let's talk about this at the break, at what it is that they're arguing. And then we can discuss whether we open it up today or tomorrow, or whether we have to put it on for another day, because put it on for tomorrow. What I had suggested is if they make the changes to the drawings now, then
I think there may need to be a discussion because they are telling me that there have been no changes to the design of the building, that the height is to clarify.
But they changed dimensions. They never gave us that dimension. I was relying on dimensions, which I stated at every hearing, that the height of the building has to stay below from 35 feet under from grade. And they were like, good. And I'm like, good. And now they changed it. So I don't think we can have a hearing on this because unless we have lots of extra time today, which we won't, I don't know when we would do it. So then I would just have to put it on for another date and maybe we reopen it, but I'm not really sure. I need to see a submission. I'm not really sure what to do at this moment, but at the moment we're deferring the decision. Okay. It's just that we have such a long calendar. We're not going to finish this by 2 o'clock.
Okay, I was just going to ask you about.
Understood. We'll get the additional information from the applicant in a submission that they can share to clarify.
I mean, I understand why their design has a little bit of an extra blip on it, but they could move the little blip. It doesn't need to be there because I don't know that it's compliant with regulations. And then that would be another waiver, and we can't now entertain a new waiver. So
Can we do Bronxdale at the break too? After this, I don't want to jump. I don't want to jump you, but can we do Bronxdale at the break too?
I don't know.
Okay, fine.
So if we're at a break, we're going to do a break. Okay, I want to give Commissioner
public hearings or
no. It's 12:04. We've been doing this for 2 hours and 4 minutes. I want to give everybody 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to the public hearing. So bringing everybody back, okay?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, we're gonna
Okay, if everyone could come back, please.
Oops. Why is that? Oh. We ready?
I think we have everybody. Yeah, we have everybody. Okay, go ahead.
Are we on? Okay, we on?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals public hearing, February 8th, 2021. This is the 10 a.m. session. Zoom webinar ID number is 985-0280-5572, and the call-in number is 646-558-8656. First item is continued hearing items on the special order calendar. Item number 12, 55137BZ, 23302 Northern Boulevard, Queens. Are we calling separate or together? Separate, right?
They've been separate all along. We might as well.
Right. I guess to make sure. I didn't ask before.
Yeah. Okay, we already have Ms. Fullader, and state your name when you can hear us.
Swear in.
Yes. You're the only one?
There are other people who registered, but it doesn't seem like they'll need to talk, so.
Okay. So
There's
do you
like
affirm to
Eugene-
tell, I'm sorry.
If you see a Eugene Chow or a Cherico, those are people might be waiting. I didn't get a
Okay.
chance to call them.
Okay. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do, thank you.
Please state your name and proceed.
Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik, PC. We heard your comments. We can get more photographs, of course, to show about that soil condition. We can remove the Q equals, I'm not an engineer, but CIA. And then also we can dimension the bollards.
Okay, that's great. So it's not just photographs. There are in the photographs that strange pile of dirt. Question is, what is it? Is there anybody here who could actually answer that? Who's your client again?
I only had the architect and the engineer. I did not have the owner because we thought the questions would be focused on drainage and trenches. And
okay, but actually architect and engineer, I'm assuming they did site visits. So maybe they could respond to that. What is that and what's going to happen to it? Because it's like a pile of dirt in the drawings. Not a pile, it's a long strip of dirt.
I'm not, okay. I think it would be best answered because maybe it can be removed in a writing, if that's okay with you.
I was hoping to be able to close this, but so that's why.
Okay, you can't close it without it? Okay, I can try to.
Actually, can someone, I'm on a different computer when I do this. Someone can screen share the photographs of 11:30 so that everybody knows what we're talking about. So it's either Kurt or Nazar who are such good screen share types.
Let me open it.
How about I'm going to call the client really fast.
Great.
718. See if he answers. Hi, Mr. Wu. We are on a hearing. Literally, I'm on a hearing. Do you know how there is that was in some photographs of your site? They won't close unless they know what that mound of dirt is on the site.
See it?
They just got finished with the Con Edison gas pipes.
Oh.
And yeah. So then the next is they're going to need to dig up for the dry well to put it in. And then after that's done, re-put the dirt back. So it was for the gas pipes.
Rather than you doing this, can he call in to the hearing?
Can you call into the hearing if I give you the number?
I'm gonna mute you, Elise, so that you don't give them.
Can you tell us the number one more time? Sorry.
Somebody.
646. I'm sorry.
646.
646 558
558
86.
8656.
Right.
And then he needs the ID number. Can you see that?
ID number is 985
Yeah. And then you need the ID
0280
Yeah.
5572.
8656. And then you need the ID number. It's 985 02 80 5572. Thank you so much. He's calling now.
Okay, great. Thanks. That makes it easier. And in the meantime, Commissioner Sheta, can you, were you able to?
I'm looking for the, are they in this submission, Chair?
No. They're the November 30th submission.
Oh, okay. Give me 60 seconds. November
30th.
Okay. Pictures.
Mhm.
Okay. Come on. Share screen. You cannot start share screen.
Hello.
Yeah, I need permission. Yep. I got it. Are we talking about that?
Yeah, that, and if you go to the next one, oh, not that side, it's on the eastern wall. That, you see that? There, go back to where you were. One more.
That's
Sorry, they logged off of it, so I have to find it again.
So Ms. Fullader, can you see on our screen share?
No.
Oh.
I cannot. Can I have the meeting ID one more time? I'm sorry, it's hard to.
Sure. It's the webinar ID number is 985
985
0280
0280
5572.
5572. Thank you.
And what's the name of the person who's going to call in?
Bill Wu.
Bill Wu.
I hope it's working for him.
Well, we always have to give it a little bit of time for him to get in. Ah, here we go. Okay. If you can hear us, to unmute, there you go. Is that Mr. Wu?
Yes, Mr. Wu speaking.
Okay, can I swear you in first though, Mr. Wu? Do you affirm to tell the
Sure.
truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board? And to respond
I do.
honestly to board member questions? Wait till I finish the question. And to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay,
Yes,
so the first part of the question, thank you, Mr. Wu, for calling in. You're not going to be able to see the issue, but Ms. Fullader, would you be able to see screen sharing again if we did that?
Try,
No,
but
no, not
he
really.
knows his site. I can see it, but he knows his site very well. So
Yeah, but I
you
want you to be able to see it. So if you have to have a conversation later.
okay, definitely, I can see it. Yes.
Okay, so these are the November 30th drawings, photographs that you submitted. And at the back of that parking lot, this sort of, well, it looks like a low wall and then a pile of dirt, right? That
Yes.
all the way at the Nazar. Do you have a point that you could point to?
Just to clarify, this is 233 02, correct?
Yes.
233 02 on the easterly side of the building.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
It's basically the wall of the adjacent property. There's
I
something
understand. Yes.
like a 3-foot strip of like a very low knee wall and then soil. And then if you look at the next photograph, which is closer to the sidewalk, but still on the east wall, there's like a curb and then a bunch of dirt, or maybe it's a curb. It's hard to see in the photograph exactly. It's not shown on our drawings as being a planted area. We don't know what that is. And I asked about it the last hearing, and the owner didn't know what it was. And I asked that it be shown on the survey, and the survey that we got doesn't show it.
It's actually because we put in the gas lines for the building, and Con Edison just finished doing their inspections for the gas line being installed already. Now, because we're installing the new dry wells pertaining to the trench drain in the front, we're going to work on that side of the property as well, the ground on that side of the property, as well as installing the dry wells. That's why.
Okay, so, are you saying that this is a recent excavation and pile of dirt?
Define recent. You mean like what, last couple of months?
Yeah, well, the photographs are from the end of November. So that's why I'm asking, is it something in the last few months?
No, it was longer than that. It was before the pandemic. We had to excavate it and put in the pipes. And then the pandemic came and we couldn't get Con Edison to come fully inspect and sign off everything. That's why it got caught up.
So the ultimate result, though, will be once all of that excavation is done, that's going to be repaved flat?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not going to be a planting bed or anything like that. It's just going to be repaved flat. Is that right?
That is correct. No planting, repave flat. Yes.
Okay. All right then.
To the original. Originally, it was paved flat anyway. I'm not changing anything. I'm just putting the pipe in and then putting it back the way it was.
Okay. It was just because it showed up in the photographs and nobody seemed to know what it was. That was why I'm like, it can't stay like that. So I understand.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Wu.
Very helpful. Thank you. All right.
Is there any other questions? Should I stay on or I can come off?
I think we don't have any other questions, right? Commissioner Sheta, do you have any questions for Mr. Wu?
No, thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for calling.
Okay, thank you, the board, for all your help. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. All right then, so clarified what that is, and you're just going to make that tiny little correction on the drawings with the bollards and the removal of that fairly useless note. And I think that's all we have. Right. Okay. So I would like then to open this up to the public.
This is 55137BZ, 23302 Northern Boulevard, Queens. You're calling in at 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 985-0280-5572. And if you're in the Zoom, room already, it's raise your hand.
Okay.
Star 6 or whatever it is, right?
Okay. So if you're in the Zoom room already and you'd like to speak on this application, please raise your hand. And the only time you need the stars is when you call in. So far we don't have any callers.
Okay.
Zoom participants, okay. So Ms. Fullader, how much time to make those teeny weeny changes?
Fast as you'll give us is what we'll take.
Fastest, okay. So I'm just gonna throw the word 2 weeks in.
Okay, sounds great.
That's just a way for me to be able to figure that. Okay, so then seeing no callers inners, I would like to make a motion to close.
Are you gonna mention the condition about the RD?
Yeah, so that's a condition, you know about this condition already. That's a condition of voting, right? That the restrictive deck, which is the last one submitted 11/23/20, that's the one that needs to be executed and recorded prior to our releasing the resolution. And council, please make a note on that resolution chart that you don't release the resolution until you receive proof the RD's been recorded, okay?
Okay.
That's our council, should make that note. And also the business operation plan has to be included in our resolution. It's page 6 of the statement of facts, has the operation, so that information should be on the resolution. Okay, so with that, a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
You're muted. If you voted, you're muted.
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay, application is closed.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Item number 13-33478BZ, 23320 Northern Boulevard, Queens. Where's Elise?
She's there, but now she's.
Sorry, I forgot there was a next one. I can swear in.
Okay. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
I do. We'll
Please state
take
your name and
the
proceed.
note off of the plans. And that I think is it.
Okay, so, any other comments from commissioners before we go to the public? So then let's go to the public.
This item is 33478BZ, 233-20 Northern Boulevard, Queens. If you're calling in, it's 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 985-0280-5572. And if you're in the Zoom room, please raise your hand to speak.
Okay, so it'll be the same 2 weeks to take the note off the plan, even though you could do it a lot faster. Okay. So I don't see anyone in the waiting room to speak on this. If you would like to speak on this application, please raise your Zoom hand. And otherwise, seeing nobody in the room with their hands up, I would like to make a motion to close this, and it would be the same conditions as previously, recording the restrictive deck prior to release of the resolution and adding the operations plan, which in this case is on page 5 of the statement of facts, adding that to the resolution. Okay, so based on that, a motion to close.
Chair Perlmutter? Aye. Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Oh, say it again.
Can't hear you. Okay. Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay. Application is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 14, 12295BZ, 152-65 Rockaway Boulevard, Queens. This is Chris Wright, right?
I don't see him in the Zoom room. Can somebody text him? Call him? Unless somebody appears on his behalf, but I don't think so. Oh, Kevin wants to, yeah, sure. We're letting Kevin Williams in.
Sorry, Joe Barbagallo, do you see me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
So we're waiting just for Chris Wright. Is that correct?
Yep.
He's coming.
Okay.
My apologies, Chair. Please bear with us for one more moment. If he's unable to join, Joe and I are prepared to respond to the board's comments.
Yeah, actually, most of them are for the two of you.
Yes,
so-
right.
Yeah. So actually then,
You want me to swear them in?
yeah, let's swear them in.
Okay. Raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to the board member questions?
I do.
I do.
Okay. I guess. we'll have
Mr.
Kevin
Wright,
go
if you
first.
could
Mr.
press
Williams?
*6 to unmute.
Oh, he's got stuff that you got.
Oh, there he is. Did you also call in or you're only on Zoom, Mr. Williams?
I'm only on Zoom.
Okay, good. All right, so why don't you proceed because we start off.
Mr. Barbagallo and myself and as well as ownership and Mr. Wright listened to the hearing. We thank you for the comments and I think we're prepared to respond. So from my review of the comments, obviously there were a lot on the noise wall and the methodology used to evaluate the sound propagation from potential trucks that would be on site. Also, there were comments relating to the traffic and DOT comments that just came up, and we had a meeting with them on Thursday, as well as some of the architectural components regarding the landscaping plan, the maintenance thereof, as well as lights. One thing I do want to note is that Joseph Barbagallo did actually prepare a revision with a bubble plan that properly responded to the board's previous requests. I do not believe that it got into the file in time for you to review, but that we will make sure that that gets supplemented, that properly shows the lighting at 18 feet and mounted on the wall and the appropriate lumen spread analysis that goes with that. So let me just, I'll have Chris, I'm kind of in the mix of things, so I'll let you hop in.
Fine, sorry, just go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so let's start with the noise wall, where there were comments of some substance and insight that I think I can help clarify. So first, I think one of the things is to kind of go through the method, but the fact is what we need to properly document it so it's easier for the board to understand what the model is, what the backup that was done, that should have been forwarded to DEP, and to address a lot of Commissioner Sheta's concern regarding the methodology, which I'm happy to say that's precisely what the model does, is exactly what he was looking for. So on the method, so the steps on this, and I'm going to use this method to then highlight specific responses to all board members' comments, particularly Vice Chair, and Commissioner Sheta on the noise analysis. So the first step that we did is monitor the existing reading from existing ambient noise at the site. And there are two ways in which you need to look at this data. One is the lowest measurement level. So you can evaluate seeker analysis because that's an incremental sort of impact, but the ultimate one is noise code, right? And that's posited to basically indicate that an open air setting, not a closed window, that you do not exceed certain thresholds. So it's a very, very difficult bar to reach. And so the existing ambient readings then are used as sort of the baseline by which you plug in to this modeling software called SoundPlan. And then at the request of the board at our last hearing, rather than simulate the sound of trucks, which is one thing I wanted to correct, is that we actually modeled a truck. We got a truck, full semi, in the site. We evaluated all forms of its maneuverability, braking systems, backing up. And I obviously one of the comments is, what about backup noise? So I'm gonna, in terms of the beeping noise. So you actually are able to turn that off, what we would posit. And I don't want to hop out, but I want to deal with some of the issues as they come along. So that was certainly a significant consideration and probably one of the greatest annoyances, of such an operation or potential operation. You can silence that, you can turn it off in the cab. And so to respond, however, to the safety purposes of that, one of the main concerns was how many trucks can you get on the site? And I have some diagrams on here. So there's only one truck moving at a time. You can actually only move one truck one time because of the tightness of the site. So in response to that and the background comments, we are happy to put in a restrictive declaration that indicates that a flag person would need to accompany the movement of a truck. And that's standard practice anyway. But it's something, particularly at this site, but it's something that we'd be happy to put in there and can both respond to safety concerns in the parking lot and also the back, and to make sure that we can back up. And primarily this is a lot that's used for employees or simply truck movements. So the idea is that there really wouldn't be people that shouldn't be there, but as we know, there are visitors that occasion these locations. And so the idea to both A, make sure that it's safe, and B, make sure that additional noise that's not necessary, particularly during the nighttime hours, that we would have a flag person there to make sure those truck movements move effectively. So then we take basically all the components of that live truck, and we actually, and this is actually maybe the question where we need to provide more detail. There's a whole backup to the report that goes to DEP that shows all of the inputs, all of the truck movement scenarios, and the fact that we took the worst case scenario and all additive noise. As you saw, there's a chart at the back of the noise report that indicates what the sound level was each of the measured points. So we didn't just measure those points. The model can take a point anywhere. So you could ask yourself 27 feet high in some specific location in a lot. And basically the model is like a heat map, right? With continuous three-dimensional noise levels, be able to assess at any point. And so the first thing we did is we just modeled without the wall and determined what the exposure levels would be. And then those were plugged into that diagram. And the selection of those points was to select a point that was representative of the maximum exposure location related to each one of those lots. So we actually put the worst case kind of condition based on the type of movements that were modeled. And we modeled a lot of them in the parking lot. And then the idea was now let's look at the wall composition, reflective or absorptive, what has the best results, right? And so the model then, imputes that the setback distance doesn't include any landscaping characteristics. I always find, assessing landscaping and modeling shielding, it's seasonal variance. It's not worth modeling at all. So it's only wall, to respond to the board's question on that. No landscaping included. So then the idea is, do we pass the threshold levels that are identified by the noise code? And so now one of the points that Commissioner Shetta was getting to regarding that is, if you, as he said, if you kind of look at this as X, Y, at any location, can you taper the wall down and that sort of thing? And one of the things is, yes, we could elegantly probably go brick by brick and break it down, but sound models are what they are and noise exposures are what they are. And the idea is to really have something like when you have a structural system, you don't design it to the limit. You want to make sure you have appropriate coverage. So one of the questions, though, that I think very thoughtfully, I think it was Vice Chair and Chair was about, what about the exposure where the little grandma flat is in the back, right, in the back corner of the lot. And one of the things that we are prepared to do that, and I do appreciate Vice Chair's comment that we wouldn't necessarily need the landscaping there, because that's what was the obstacle, is that if we had the 5 feet with the landscaping, with the wall, it would lead to complications using those two back, the smaller docks in the back. And so now one of the things that we did model was the presence of that structure there, which has no windows against or on the side. So we actually modeled in front of that structure, and maybe just so if at the board's discretion, if I could share my screen, that might be easier to kind of describe. Okay. So. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Can you see the PowerPoint screen?
Yeah, and the dog.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's showing the wrong screen, but let me share a different screen. That's my dog. Hold on a second.
Isn't it great how with Zoom you learn all these things about people?
It provides a little bit of humanity, right? The whole, let's see, I have too many screens, sorry. Yeah, he's very upset at how busy I am lately. Okay. Okay. So there's this little like sort of backyard home here, right? And one of the things that when I looked at the sound wall results, we try to get this in as quickly as possible, and that's not an excuse for not doing good work. So we are happy to be able to jog this wall. What the model shows that this building provides the capacity to absorb and to not result in noise impacts. Now it's possible to run this wall to our wall, basically typical. Along with this, there's a little gap here. I think the only thing that would suffer is potentially the removal of this building, of this tree. So, there's not an issue doing that. And I think our updated results can show whether it's a combination of that structure, which has, as I said, has no windows. There is one here, but I think the idea is maybe if it's a simpler solution and one that, takes into account that, we would just simply cover these gaps in return, or we would just continue the whole wall structure, but we would modify it. So there's that little piece where there's some exposure. And we've already discussed this internally and making sure that this is sort of, a proper seal. So that's kind of the idea. I'm happy to discuss more about how the model runs. I think the key thing to help the board is to get some graphics. So we have really cool graphics, right, that are outputted that show the bleed from the noise exposures and how they over distance and at height, right, reduce from the point source, exactly as the board requested. And so while I was offline, I spoke to my acoustic engineer and I asked, can you please output, and bear in mind, there's a lot of outputs, right? Because we modeled truck movements in all sorts of different directions. I'm like, just give them an idea and show all the locations and show them the maximum exposures. And then the board will understand methodologically how this program works, that it's based off of real world data, and that it uses the type of algorithms that the chair indicated that a lot of people do manually. This is a very elegant program. It allows you literally to find foot by foot what the reduction is, different barriers. So we put the whole three-dimensional model in place. We just kind of gave you sort of a very summary report, but it definitely follows the same type of guidance that the board has on sort of like sandwich boards or boards that drive through, same type of concept. So that part's that. So one of the things while we're discussing this, I really would rather, maybe it's probably easier now to just go through your comments and discuss, and then you guys.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes, sure.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry about that.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Just I feel like I'm getting lost little by little.
No
My point was this. I was confused about the table that I described in my comments. That table that gives the locations.
Yes.
And it says anticipated. So anticipated is kind of a concern for me. Is this a real measurements? When you talk about the model, are you talking about a prediction based on measurements or direct measurements at locations 1 through 5 or 1 through 6? And if we're talking about measurements, is it at single height or multiple heights? You need to clarify that, because if the answer to this is it's measurements, I believe it's going to be totally different word from its predictions. If it's predictions, then what are the basis for that? And that would open the discussion for how did you get to tie the model, the measurements, to that model predictions
Yeah,
to the anticipations.
yeah.
So let's go to the first part. Are they predictions, meaning that they are based on analytical study, based on the model measurements, or are they direct measurements?
So two parts of that response. So the measurements regarding these movements, you see here, do you see my,
No, the cursor, yeah, now, yes.
I
okay.
do, yeah.
So 1 through 5. So these movements, truck forward, reverse, truck trailer hitch, air brakes, they're all cumulatively assessed. Those are based off of movements of a truck on site, an actual real truck. But you can't go, so I can't go into somebody's yard, right? So what we did is we did ambient readings without that truck. And what SoundPlan does is use physics to estimate the exposure level at that person's backyard. So expected is calculated. You know, that's what that term means.
What kind of physics? What kind of physics did you use?
We used
Did you use the 6 dB reduction rule?
So yes, all of that is always. So yeah, that's what I was explaining, Commissioner Shedd, is we have software where we model the environment. It's called SoundPlan. It is the most state-of-the-art software. It takes that noise measurement where we took it at the site, so the ambient 48, which is the lowest level. And then what it does is it takes the readings, so that was an actual reading, and then it takes the actual data that we collected from truck movements. And then the idea is, so this ambient is assumed at all of these locations, right? So this is the existing condition that is assumed. And if anything, you know, this is incredibly conservative. And so the idea then is we took all of these noise movements at the locations and various ones. We took the worst case proximate to this location. And then, yes, it imputes X, Y coordinates for like an infinite number of ranges. So if you wanted to ask me what, based on the model, and let me just pull up this map. If you wanted to know the noise here, or you wanted to know the noise at this person's window, or you wanted to know the noise at this person's corner, you take those two readings, and yes, it can give you any height, any distance, and yes, it assumes doubling a distance. It assumes the propagation of sound waves. So the double distance tests, we usually do longhand on all of our submissions, right?
What is the name of that software?
SoundPlan. It's throughout the document that we provided and in all the backup that went to DEP. So I'd be, you know, so you can Google it, SoundPlan software. It's approved by New York City.
What kind of input data does it take?
It takes required DEP data. So I can give you the full log outreach so that it requires, but basically just so the typical type of noise we give to DEP is averaged over a term of time. Here we analyze the impulse, the worst case. So when it says 90, we didn't average that out over an hour or over a second or over a minute. That's literally the loudest exposure level. So we basically did readings all day long to get the ambient levels. So from whatever it was, the closing time from 9 p.m.
That's natural. You need to take data over like the entire day to get the critical ambient temperature.
This is so Commissioner, we do this for a living. All right, we provide all required backup data for DEP to review. All right, if you want me to pull up, I'll do it just to satisfy your curiosity on this matter. But we've supplied the data that's required, and it's not all day. We're looking for an ask, but so the idea is the lower the noise, the harder it is to attenuate the impact actually. So you have daytime noise. We're looking for an extension of term for the daytime noise, right? The problem is the nighttime noise. So that's subject to seeker review. Okay, so just so you know, we took that over the whole term of the nighttime ask. Okay, and just so you can see some of the backup data that is utilized and the format. So this is actually we did 24 hours. So that it would even be better. We left a meter out there running all day.
So the 40,
Madam Chair, I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
let me just clarify. So the 48 dBA, that is the average ambient of nighttime, or it's the typical ambient for nighttime?
It's actually the lowest reading that we got, what's
okay.
called the L10 level. But so these are the, sorry.
Okay, so then it's the lowest level. What time, when was the 48?
I need to pull it up. Hold on a second.
Okay. Because I agree that what we're talking about is the nighttime. It's, 3 o'clock in the morning when you're to be sound asleep, and then the trucks are operating.
But even that 48 is not what I'm asking about. What I'm asking about is this. Let's say location 1 is a window at, let's say, 2nd floor. So it's probably 15 feet above grade. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what you did on site, measurement wise, is you put a truck, have the truck do different events, like push the brakes, move forward, move backward, and so on. And then you measured the noise coming from this truck at different locations. Again, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was done at a specific distance from that specific truck in a specific unique single direction, not unique single direction, at a specific height above grade. So my point is, if my understanding is correct, how did you correlate something that's 3 feet above grade to something that's 16 or 15
We have
feet
a
above grade?
mathematical
Let
model.
me finish. Let me
So
finish.
I've answered your question. I've answered this question at least 3 different ways. So, please let me know what, you indicated as reference that you studied physics in school. So they have software now.
Can you let me finish? I haven't finished yet.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, if I put follow stop here, I would anticipate that you use the 6 decibel reduction rule and the physics to get to the
Yes.
anticipated number. But my
Yes, we
point
did.
is, you did
Yes.
this for the window. You did
Every
this for
possible XY coordinate that anyone can ask, height, linear distance on the site. We have used a myriad of different readings on the site for possible truck movements that then can be mathematically extrapolated to any 3-dimensional point anywhere in range of the site. So yes. So if we took the monitoring location at 6 feet, that point was inputted into a 3-dimensional model that had characteristics associated at that point, as well as the other various readings we had on site. It combines those exposure levels, and then you're able to tell based on height or distance what the imputed point would be at any level. So rather than actually me doing an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of assumed points and different heights on a 3-dimensional cube that encompasses the project area, we have a software that does that for you. So yes.
And I understood that and I appreciate it. I didn't say you did like a bad quality work. I'm actually praising what you did. And I did thank you at the beginning for that.
No, I know, Commissioner. I'm trying to satisfy your answer that this was.
My point is this: you measured in one direction. It's kind of like, for me, and again, correct, I'm not a sound engineer. For me, you're like assuming that the sound propagation is isotropic. In that direction is similar to this, similar to that. Was that the assumption? If the answer is no, what was the assumption?
So first of all, I mean.
Can I interrupt before we go on with this too long? Because unfortunately it's 1 o'clock and we have many other cases. There were a lot of questions, and you can hear that Commissioner Sheta's like not quite understanding the modeling system, right? I think that the best would be, and one of the reasons is because we really do need to see backup and we didn't get it. So
we supplied all of the backup chair. There was a huge backup folder submitted along with our application that was subject.
The submission was January 14th, I think, right?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yes.
submission package of all the noise analysis?
Yes, Vice Chair.
With the backup? Yeah.
Yes.
I just have a question for Mr. William.
Wait, before we do this, I just need to finish this part
Yeah.
off, right?
So
Let me finish my sentence, okay? So the issue is understanding the modeling, and I had like lots of questions too, like what were the assumptions and so on. Can you please answer those questions and the questions that Commissioner Sheta has brought up now, the questions in the review session, and attach to your response the images of the models so that we can know what you're referring to when. If backup data was submitted, it wasn't attached to the actual noise report, or if it was, maybe there was some disconnection about our ability to review it. We're having some technical problems with how the PDFs get submitted. So I think that kind of breaking down your answer would be really helpful. Like in that very short report you gave us, there was a chart. If in your response you give us the model that shows an example of this, and here was one point that was modeled, here is the modeling imagery, and if you look at, you know, whatever it is, Appendix 12, you'll see 346 other models, then we know that there's an Appendix 12. But actually, I never found the backup data. I looked everywhere for it in the materials I was reading, and I didn't find it. So maybe that's part of the clarification. I'm not saying you didn't submit it. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but we're reviewing on PDFs and in a kind of a very data heavy location, and sometimes they don't show up. Okay, so maybe they're there and it's frustrating because we should have seen it.
It's probably not something you can review because it's in, it's data that's not going to make any sense. And I think the intent was to provide a summary report, and then DOP would opine on it. But I think that maybe I could just quickly, so I get exactly what you need to make this easier. And the fact is, maybe one of the interesting things, if it helps illuminate it, is to do some screenshots about how it was built, and that sort of thing, because it is like sending something into a black box. And so I think Commissioner Cheta's comments I actually get what you're saying now. So like the idea is like you took a monitoring equipment here in front of the truck. Well, did you do this location or that location? And so I will definitely have our acoustic engineer opine on whether we might have missed something in that. And so, I didn't have them here today, and I did correspond with them offline, but I do realize that these are issues needed to help illuminate the methodology, and so that you don't have to just grossly accept referral agency or this black box model results are correct. So
and just to clarify, I do remember trying to open up the backup data, and all of it is in a program that we don't have. So you can't, like we can't review CAD drawings because we don't have CAD. So that's part of it. So if you
understood. I mean, I really think this is going to satisfy the board. It's just more explanatory, stepwise information is needed. And our Commissioner, I will definitely get you that point. If you want to provide more clarification, but I think I get it.
Okay, and then I'll go to.
My question is for Mr. Williams of two things. One is the analysis that you are doing and the model that you're using, sound plan that you're using. I'm assuming these are approved and accepted modeling system methodology and software by DEP?
Yes, not only that, not only is the modeling software accepted and used throughout New York City for these type of noise studies, as well as construction noise, but the data format, and that goes to the questioner that Commissioner Sheta had, is like, what were the readings like? All of this is per standard DEP requirements. So they have very specific 3-octave band requirements and all of these things. So they are, all of that data is compliant. We're very careful providing
I'm not talking about the validity of the software you're using. I'm not talking about that. Every single software that does something, there is a concept in modeling, in numerical modeling. It's called GIGO. It stands for garbage in, garbage out. And I want to make sure that no garbage was put in. So what we're getting is garbage. And I'm not saying it is. I did thank you. I did praise what you did. I just want to make sure, how did you move from measuring in a straight line to anticipating, predicting in different directions? As far as I understand, and I did get some good lessons in physics back in the day, that the 6 decibel reduction rule is valid in the direction of the wave propagation. In a direction that's shifted to that at an angle, I don't think it's 6 decibel. And I believe that evidence for that, when you look at the menu board chart, if the menu board story is about the 6 decibel thing, the manufacturer wouldn't produce that chart. The circles with the contours, with different distances. He could have.
This is what we did.
That.
Chair, understood, Commissioner. This is the type of analysis we did, all directions, any direction, possible barriers, and all that stuff. So I will.
If you did so, that's perfect.
Yeah, I will provide that
you.
back
Give
up
us the
for you.
data.
Yeah.
And just to add that I know that, you know, these are standard things that are sent to DEP, but in the long line of not just accepting whatever we're told, we try to understand what it is we're reading to the extent that we can, given our various educational expertise levels. And that's why it's okay to ask these questions, even though DEP is also going to be reviewing it, right? So, and we learn, by the way, we become like aeronautical flight engineer honorary because of other cases, right? So this is.
And so, you know, absolutely. And sometimes I give you guys more things, particularly on parking studies, and you care to even look at, you know, this type of study, because it was very specialty. You know, we used an acoustic engineer that literally does these warehouses, like hundreds of them all over the country. So, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in this type of acoustic environment. The typical one, Commissioner, that you identified, where you do the double distance and you do the monitoring, I mean, that's what our firm does. We brought somebody in who does these very complicated maneuvering type of things. So not to beat the dead horse, I will absolutely, and by the way, this is one of the reasons why I love this board, and is that you're constantly trying to learn and do improvement on all these processes, and for your consultants as well. It's a process of learning the type of proofs and the information that you need to satisfy your judgments. So I will take this all into consideration, make sure I re-listen to all the comments, and that I assemble either a brief or a supplement to the report that we've given you today that walks you step by step how this works. And then well, hopefully that will satisfy the information. But I really appreciate the questioning though, Commissioner Shetta, because you know a lot of folks don't look into this detail, and you're absolutely right. Garbage in, garbage out. You miss one little thing, it cascades through the model. All right, so let me just move on to some of the substance. Right, the final. So I just want to go to the aesthetics of that wall. I think a lot of the board members kind of understand the balance that we're at here. And the one comment that was made regarding you know, the canyon effect and the appearance of the wall. So there are lots of different textures. We could do a wood texture, all these types of things. But I think we've supplied a barrier that has some linear and vertical compositional elements to sort of soften the sort of hard wall that's currently present. You know, that, as you indicate, is 9 blocks have a 20+ foot high wall already, right? And there is some ivy growing on that. And so the one point here is, so we will look at the shadows, as you indicated, cast on here. And then in addition, so I think the applicant and Mr. Wright and Joe Barbagallo and the owner are prepared to put a maintenance plan together to respond to your concerns. And, you know, while we're on this topic, Joe, why don't you just discuss the couple of things you did with me offline about how your landscape architect selected the plant matter?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Ken. So first, thanks, Madam Chair and all the commissioner. Thanks for your time today. We looked, we understood the, of course, the situation in terms of the tunnel-like space that was being created between the existing fence and the new wall. And that led us right to the English ivy, by the way, because the English ivy does well in part to full shade. So we felt that that would be the best cover to use inside of the planting bed, as well as growing up onto the fence along the backside of the fence, because it aggressively grows. So I can't say from right where I am now how quickly that the propagation of growth would be, but it's certainly something that I can provide. So that's how we ended up with the English ivy.
Can I ask you a question, though? Kevin had mentioned the word landscape architect. Did you work with a landscape architect?
There's a landscape architect in my firm that I did work with, and he's not on the phone now. He was in fact on last meeting, but he did select this this plan, as you see illustrated here in the drawings today.
Okay.
One thing I do have to clarify, Madam Chair, is on Rockaway Boulevard, you were correct to see that it did appear graphically as English ivy was part of the planting, but it is in fact only the inkberry, and I'll make that correction. In fact, what I think I'll do is I'll blow those planting beds up to a larger scale, so it'll be much clearer how many are there and exactly where they're located.
Okay.
So I'll do that. I will, as Kevin mentioned, provide a maintenance plan, and I will address control of vermin, as you mentioned earlier, as I heard earlier today during the review session.
Okay, I'm not sure how you do it, but when you do it, let us know what you're doing, because this is an ongoing discussion at this board for many applications. So yeah, what I learned about rats is that they love to go underneath the low cover. That's like yummy, comfortable land. And then if there's a food source, then that's where they'll run out to the food source and then come back to their really pleasant nesting ground. So you're kind of creating this nirvana for them in this 5-foot space. And we don't want to create nirvana. So
I seem to remember in one of the cases, someone had proposed a special kind of mulch on the ground, which actually detracts vermin. So maybe that's another way of making sure it's not attractive. Special kind of, it was one of the gas stations where they had proposed a special kind of mulch on the ground that rodents hate.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that to me. I will certainly look into that.
Okay.
So one of the comments that was brought up, and Chair, as you noted your experience at Landmarks, right, and basically doing a demo test in the field. And what I would argue is you already have the demo test present. You have the presence of this building abutting, what here is about 25 feet tall wall, and you have this additional wall. And then, you have this 16 to 18 foot high cube that's already located here. That's basically been there for about a year from my review of the aerial photography. I mean, we kind of already have an aesthetic view of what these might look like and what their impacts would be. And I mean, we kind of militate here two ways, right? We're providing a screen from Rockaway Boulevard already and from the existing operations that are present. So that's plus, right? And then the concern, though, is about a canyoning effect in light. And I think the shadow study here will bear out the impact based on the slenderness of the wall and that sort of thing. But we will look at that to provide some, real information regarding whether that would impact anything of substance or shadow up walls or that sort of, or windows and that sort of thing. I mean, I think we can do that pretty quickly to address that concern, because I think that's legitimate as well. But I definitely feel like a quality looking wall that doesn't look industrial for a long time. If we're, we'll work on the aesthetic composition of that wall. Right now, there's the one that we supplied, as I said, has like a little bit more industrial look, but there's a wood PVC type of wall that's lightweight, it's attractive, it looks just like wood. And so we'll have some spec options that Joe and I will run over and pick one that, you know, with the landscape architect's advice, provides something that's the most sort of comforting and warm as that backdrop. If stone is determined not to be, you know, the most favorable, you know, we have basically an equivalent type of attenuation substance. And this is the type of wall, by the way, that is used on a highway. You know, so this is like really very solid. So that was the one thing you were missing, was details on that spec. That spec was plugged into the model, but I'll give you the details, the section, and the cut sheets from the manufacturer, so you can see this information and what it looks like installed, and what you and the rough and ready from the cut sheets, and the section about what the interior composition, so you can kind of see a little bit more about that. And I realized that on our submission that it was kind of like, this is the wall, and it didn't really give you any details. So that was my mistake there.
Right. Just a question. You said that the semi is 16 to 18 high. When I looked it up, it was 14. Can you actually check what the height is?
That's a standard cube height. Yes, so that's correct. And by the way, so one of the things is traditionally in past use, and my looking at the operational program and the previous grant, basically the size of trucks are effectively limited that actually can get into the site. And that's one other thing that's very important to address, Chair, in terms of your comments, is the characterization and the concern that there would be a lot of simultaneously overlapping truck movements in this lot. And I wanted to address that just from a look at the maneuverability plans. So the fact is, you can only maneuver one truck at a time in this lot. And that's one of the reasons why also, in terms of, because of the narrowness and the orientation of the site, you know, you really can't have a lot of activity here. Also, the size of trucks that are present here are limited 40-foot style box trucks, not the large, you know, semis that have 60-foot tractor trailers at the end. Those are actually not present anywhere on the site. And FHWA actually limits cubes to a minimum of 48. So this is a little bit smaller truck than like the sort of full sized rigs that would be coming in, but we modeled like the fullest, largest CC capacity engine type of truck that could move in this lot. So we basically have these 40-foot berths here. You know, you're probably getting about a 38-foot truck. And the idea is that one would have to be parked and off for another one to come in. And so one of the things that we did to make sure we model the worst case condition is, yeah, okay, so maybe you might have a few trucks an hour. That is not borne out actually by the traffic analysis that was done. So remember, you have 14 berths, you know, you have 5 internal here, and then you have ones on the street. Obviously, operationally, you know, we want to make sure that appropriate trucks go in the appropriate locations. But the fact is, you have these other berths that and activity at nighttime is not nearly as intense here. So one of the things I would just, both functionally and from a practice standpoint, the type of activity that could be conceived here is simply not the case. You cannot move more than 2 vehicles at a time. And if you would like us to stipulate that in a letter or in the resolution, we'd be happy to do that, because just functionally, you can't do it. So I wanted to make sure, sorry, Chair.
What we do need is an operational plan where you're very clear about how, you talked about a flag man before. So, so that has to be in the operational. Go through all of that, and we'll have that in a plan, and that will go in document.
Right. So that'll address that.
Possible? I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Shedd. I'm sorry.
Since you're using software, is it possible to just do it for like information, to put another noise source, like another truck on site, and see what's going to be happening?
Well, so that we can certainly do that, but I just want to note, like it's literally impossible to have 2 trucks moving simultaneously. Now, if you want to hear
I'm not saying moving. I'm not saying moving. I'm saying, let's say one of them is parking and just started the engine, and the other one is just maneuvering? Because you have like 3, 4, 5 bays for the trucks to come in. If you're saying it's impossible to have more than one, I would say you shouldn't have more than one bay to.
Commissioner, I didn't say it's impossible to have more than one truck. It's impossible to have more than one truck moving. So as far as showing one idling, I can absolutely do that, but we make it, and this goes back to the operating plan. We will make it clear, and it's standard practice, because you don't like people moving, moving goods in and out of a van that's running or a truck that's running. So we will indicate ignition off during unloading and loading time. But yes, Commissioner, if that is certainly something that we can model based off of the data that we have, is just a truck maneuvering and a truck unload, like in the bay, that is its ignition is running.
Okay, great.
Yep, thank you.
So I think I just want to make sure I don't leave. So the lighting discussion, so as I said, we had submitted plans. We'll make sure that the next one you get show clearly that it's below the height of the wall. And so now I just wanted to address just the DOT traffic comments very briefly, because I know basically you need them to sign off on it. So the first thing is so we have this condition right now where you have, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, so we have this odd condition that was approved by the board in 1996, approved by DOT, approved by Builder's Pavement Plan. And DOT rightfully, when they looked at this, even though we really sent them a trip generation to make sure we didn't cross any secret thresholds, they looked at it and they said, there's some red flags. So what you have right now is you have this ramp, and this ramp goes to parking, employee parking only, not truck movements, nothing, no trucks are able to get clear through here, 16 spaces in the cellar. And that's been existing since at least 1996. And so at that time, a 30-foot curb cut was approved. That 30-foot curb cut would have, and as approved at that time, would have actually caused vehicles to have to mount the curb to get into the ramp downstairs. So, and then at some point in time, a street tree was installed. It's a little bit different from the drawings, which show it right in the middle of the driveway. But I wanted to show you this condition. Here's the condition. Let me see if I can enlarge this. Sorry. Well, as you can see, as you approach, you really cannot see that entry, and then you have a tree blocking it. And the curb design, the curb cut design as it stands right now is literally, it's hard to, let me, this is a good shot. It's like a 90-degree angle with no splay access, and then it's basically this super long 50-foot curb cut, which is non-compliant. And so what I had discussed actually after our call with DOT is to make sure we, so let me go back to the first step. So the first thing we did per that call is explore straightening the ramp. And because of the need to have a 7%, 6% is better ramp that goes down into the cellar, and to clear the first floor, it basically pushes the ramp structure out into the entire parking lot. And so this is probably something they saw earlier on. So that if we had to accommodate that, it would basically invalidate that, or we'd have to use this curb cut that's open over here. We'd have to try to move this curb cut and move some parking. And the main issue is, you have to be 100 feet from an intersection with a curb cut request. And so I had asked, can we make this safer and more legible for entry and exit by deploying a few other measures? Because this is simply not going to function, and we would not be able to use the cellar parking. And DOT made it clear to me that they just want to make more safe. They want it functional. And so I posited the notion of separating this into two curb cuts, one both which would be compliant, a 12-foot curb cut with splay, a 30-foot curb cut with splay. This way you'd have separate drive entries, a removal of this tree, and then signage here indicating no standing, because the issue is when you come up from this ramp, you need to be able to, and the cars that may be turning in, and 98% of the traffic is one way. So one of the things to supplement this is putting line of sight directional mirrors on the ramp for those coming in and out. And I think this is relatively simple solution, and it basically repairs, whatever they were reviewing 24 years ago. So we're gonna put this in a design, submit it to DOT, go back and forth with them, make sure they're comfortable with this. Obviously, removing the street tree, signing this no standing 25 feet to this, so there's a line of sight, and having them approve this curb cut setup is all something that they'll have to discretionarily approve. But I think it's sort of a simple, no-brainer type of response to the concern.
Can we put can we move this? Can we put the tree someplace else so we don't?
We will absolutely identify a home for it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other comments from DOT were just about how we did the trip gen. So, and that is easily resolvable. We use the IT manual. The city does not. This is probably a freight forwarding location similar to what's appropriate from air freight cargo, rather than a last mile facility. And so the concern was, when we analyze this, we did not analyze it on an existing program. We use the IT manual to assess a worst case condition based on square footage, right? So we just need to make sure that both DOT and Equity agree on the IT manual setup. So there's like 4 different types of warehouses. We'll take the one that's most appropriate or the worst case of the use, and just close the loop on that end. So I think that's, let me just see if I had any other, so we clarify the use of basement. So clarify the use of the vehicles. So just to sum up, operating plan, maintenance protocol, a letter or something from Mr. Barbagallo's landscape architect, identifying the means and methods and the purposes for installing those plantings, revised plans showing the proper location for the wall-mounted lights, an operating plan indicating several of the components that we indicated to supplement the operating plan that Chris had, indicating no backup lights, flagmen, the anticipated operations and logistical movements on the site, and to the degree that we can, indicating the utilization overnight of the lot, responding in full to the board's needs to have an iterative process using the modeling software, and as well as exhibits that demonstrate that information, and a revised wall to close off that section. Did I capture everything as far as you can tell?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just going to ask you also, because I know it's hard to take notes while you're listening to the review session simultaneously, to go back to the review session and really write down all the questions to make sure those are answered, because and I don't need to spend time on it here, but I'm noting my questions, like the sound plan chart has a 97 to 112 dBA for the air brakes, whereas you were using lower numbers on your cable I-16 or something like that.
I will absolutely clarify that, yeah.
And then also I had a question about the sound reflected off of the warehouse. Sometimes we get that echo sound.
So I will put this in the memo, Chair. So the model actually assumes wall reflectivity and building reflectivity. And so we'll note that as well. Well, we did test both a reflective and an absorptive wall to have the best properties for reducing the amount of noise, and the reflective wall actually was better, but we will include that in the mall and the rationale.
Okay, I meant reflecting off of the building.
Oh, so yeah, that's the model captures all of it. The existing building, what the composition of it is, yeah.
Great. Okay, excellent. I do really, really appreciate the professionalism that you take to all of these questions. You're calm, even when it's frustrating because we're asking what could be viewed as baby questions. But I do appreciate really that you take the time and energy to respond to all of our questions, concerns.
I enjoy it, and I probably wouldn't, it probably wouldn't be as stressful, but so as Chris will know, we have a very stressed out applicant. He had, and so that's something Chris will deal with in discussing the timing, but I appreciate it, Chair, because I do enjoy this, but it is, we try to predict stuff, and I'm constantly trying to improve, so I appreciate the consideration.
Okay, all right. So do we have any others input from the applicant? Otherwise, I'd like to go to the community, to the public who might want to call in. And
We're done.
really need to move along, and I don't want to spend any more time that we don't need to. So Mr. Wright, unless you're going to add something that's not already here, I'd like to go to the public. Thanks. And so while we're waiting for actually, go ahead, Tony, do your thing. Tony, are you there?
Muted, sorry. Keep muting myself. 12295 BZ, 15265 Rockaway Boulevard, Queens. If you want to call in, it's 646-558-8656.
And the passcode is 9850.
Zoom webinar D number is 985-0280-5572.
Thanks. So if you'd like to speak on this, please call in to that information. There's a couple of people in the waiting room whose names I don't recognize. So if you'd like to speak on this case, please raise your Zoom hand. And in the meantime, while we wait, please tell me how much time you need to respond to these questions, these issues.
Kevin, you need to answer that.
Yeah, so as far as the noise work, it's literally a matter of just drawing out the proper detail, and we have all this work done. The DOT comment is the one that will take the most time. We intend on getting a response back immediately. So we, at the discretion of the board, we'd like to schedule something that is as soon as possible, but respecting the fact that we're, it's 30 days DOT review.
Right.
And so we will get our response back to the substance of the hearing this week. So, given those two inputs and the request from the applicant and owner who has potential offers on the board right now and desperately wants to move forward, I've made a commitment to do whatever is possible. So whatever the board is willing to do in terms of the quickest timing and the schedule, with obviously the notion that we need to do this right, let me know. But I something within 30 to 45 days would be fantastic.
Submit 30 to 45 days?
Yeah, I think, we plan on resubmitting immediately. So, I would say 2 weeks, Chris.
Yeah.
For resubmission. And then from that 30 days review time. Yeah, so that's where I was thinking.
I see. Okay. So what I do see, and Tracy, please correct me if I'm wrong, I see that noises, you got the promise date of February 15th on your initial noise submission. So we don't have that yet. And then we have obviously DOT just issued their comments on January 15th, which you're going to respond to, or kind of did already, but we'll continue the response with them.
Yes, right.
So you have the DOT turnaround and then your response to whatever happens from DEP when they submit mid-February, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks. Okay, what's the time in DOT? Okay, so as always, your submission to us on sort of the architectural and the kinds of questions that we had go into the submission deadline that's relative to the hearing dates, right? So let's just say it was 2 weeks from today was your submission deadline, just for argument's sake, right? But you should be submitting as soon as you get the comments and as soon as you can, to the two other agencies, DOT and DEP, so that the turnaround is constant, right? Okay, great. So thank you very much. I'll let you know when the next.
Can I make one request, please?
Yes.
You know, as Kevin mentioned, you know, the site's been vacant for 8 months now, so there's a bit of
Mr.
hardship.
Wright, I'm going to interrupt because I know what you're asking for. You want it as early as possible. We're going
No, I'm not asking that. I'm asking something different. If possible, you could put it on the decision calendar, so if we can get everything in, we can get the vote.
No, it doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't work like that. First, we have to get to the place where we're satisfied and we can close, and then it moves to a decision. We do not put it on a decision. We're not ready to close. We have a lot of open issues. All right.
Okay. I wanted to just make the request. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Item number 15, 207 68 BZ 11558 Dunkirk Street, Queens.
Good afternoon, Sandy Anagnostou representing the applicant, and I'm joined by Steve Green, the property owner, although I don't see him here.
Yeah, no, he's here. He's here.
Okay.
Okay, can I sway in?
Yes.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Mr. Green?
You're muted, sir.
Yes, I do.
Okay, please proceed, Ms. Agnostou.
So I heard the board's comments earlier in the review session. We submitted revised plans, which basically were for the board to review and give us their feedback on the work that's proposed. We included a landscaping plan with the curb detail, and I'm pleased that the board was happy with that. We also show the proposed demarcation of the 6 parking spaces, the addition of striping in the parking area in order to discourage any open storage in that area, because it should strictly be used for parking. We also are proposing a sign on the side of the building to deter any storage, and I heard the vice chair's comments regarding that, so we will add additional signage at every entrance. Additionally, we are going to be cleaning up the wooded area and repairing the fence that's in disrepair in that area. Mr. Green does own that property, and the predecessor in title who sold the property to Mr. Green also owned it. And we'll be submitting additional records once we have those, but what is shown on our site plan is correct. And we verified the conditions at the site, and the site plan is actually drawn correctly. So our proposal is to actually have any unloading or loading within the building, and then if anything needed to be stored, it would strictly be stored in the open storage area at the rear of the building as shown on the site plan, and that material would be transferred there using a forklift. And we show the maneuverability on sheet P007. We think this is the best way. There are 2 existing overhead doors, and this area would only be used by the main tenant. And the overhead doors lead directly out to that area. Plus the adjacent land use there is railroad tracks. There are no residences, as opposed to the side yard where there is a residence. We misunderstood. I mean, our plan was to submit photos once the work will be completed, and that's what we're planning to do once all the work is done, the landscaping, the cleanup, and everything else. But I understand the board's concern about this storage area and the proposal to actually construct an enclosure. That would be, I discussed that with Mr. Green after the review session, and it would be problematic to him, and he could elaborate, but basically for 3 reasons. One, the main reason is cost. It would be a substantial cost for him to construct this, this structure. He's already significantly reduced the rent for the tenants due to the COVID pandemic, and he's just trying to hold on to them. So this would be a big cost and a big burden to him. Then we would probably lose more parking, and we've already reduced the parking spaces from 10, which were under the original grant, to 6 spaces. And that would be a burden to the community because there is no on-street parking here. The parking area is used by the tenants, employees, and visitors to the building. And furthermore, the third reason would be, well, what the board then proposed was to put a short leash on this and have a 1-year term, I guess. That would be a problem as far as leasing the property. Currently, there's a lease which expires in August, and it's my understanding that the tenant, the main tenant, may not be renewing this lease because they own another building in Brooklyn and may actually be moving out of here. So that creates a problem for the owner because if he's successful in finding another tenant, he could not give more than a 6-month lease, and typically commercial leases are 5 to 10 years. So he's actually proposing, instead of doing this, and I think he understands the board's concern. And obviously during this time and always the board will be monitoring it given the situation. But he would rather do the work and respectfully request that the board give him 3 to 4 months to complete all the work. And then he would be providing a template, say a copy of a lease where he would include in the lease this restriction that no storage is allowed in the side yard, and anything stored there would be grounds for termination of the lease. That's what we're proposing. We think the best solution is to have the storage in the rear and just have it confined to that area. And rather than having anything going through the side yard, which will lead to temptation of people potentially storing it there even temporarily, he'd rather solve the problem with having just any potential storage be at the rear of the building and have the direct way out through the building.
Okay.
He can elaborate on that, Mr. Green, if you'd like to.
Yes, I think that the tenant is the key basically to the storage problem. This particular tenant did not have a prohibition against storing anything in the side, nor did he have my permission. And I've owned this building since 1980, and it's the first tenant that used it for storage rather than parking. You know, so it didn't even occur to me that it would happen, although this tenant did. He must have been overloaded and then started to use the sides for storage. But being that the lease is up in August, and they indicated to me they're not renewing, it seems to me that the problem can be solved if I find a new tenant. The new lease will prohibit them from doing it upon termination if they don't, cause for termination if they don't do it. If they go, they may not need it anyway for storage, but they would probably need it for parking. And the priority is parking in that neighborhood because there's no parking in the neighborhood. And just as I said, a variance for 1 year would probably prevent me from getting somebody to lease it, because as I understand it, they would, all my tenants ask that a C of O is in order there before they would commit to a period. And usually the commitment is usually 5 or 10 years, usually 5 years.
Well, so let me just jump on that. So when we talk about, it's not a variance for 1 year, it's kind of like a compliance hearing in 1 year. We could phrase it like that the term is extended, but that you have to come back in 1 year to demonstrate compliance, to do something like that, which is a different thing. I don't think that would affect if anything, it would force your tenants to behave better because they have to show compliance after 1 year. That's another approach to it. Because what happens if this current tenant renews? You would have to amend.
Well, yes, if the current tenant renews, it would be the same thing. He has to sign a new lease.
Okay.
And he would be prohibited from using the side, only the rear. So it doesn't matter. The new lease will have it in it no matter who the tenant is. And most likely, because of COVID, his business is way off. That's why he's going to consolidate and move to Brooklyn. I'm like 90% sure that he's moving. He told me he's moving. So.
Right, can I just say something?
Sure.
It's difficult for me to have confidence in your ability to enforce the no storage in the side yard, simply because once we brought up that it was an issue, your tenant did not observe the conditions of no storage in the side yard. They kept doing it. I was the one who actually saw it. Right. And I was the one who brought it to their attention that after the fact, even while this case has been in active hearing, the tenant has not complied, which gave me little confidence that when we do not have our eyes specifically trained on this site, that they would begin to comply. And so as a solution that we thought would actually solve the problem, we suggested putting a structure in that side yard so that nobody had to be witnessing any kind of outdoor storage and maneuvering of storage activities, which could be disruptive to other people in the community. So the alternative to that would be putting you on a very short leash, because otherwise we don't have any other enforcement tools. And so that's why we were giving it as an either or. Now, I understand that you don't want to put a structure in the side yard, but that still doesn't give me confidence that you're going to be able to keep that side yard free and clear. So the other option is we can give you an extension with the idea that if I or any of the commissioners or the compliance officer sees storage in the side yard, we can bring you back in and just withdraw your grant. So that's how serious a situation this could be if you don't comply. So I just want you to understand that.
Well, remember, I understand that, and I do appreciate it, and I am trying to comply. But I think the problem is with the tenant, this particular tenant. This, as I stated before, the tenant did not have the prohibition in his lease, nor did he have my permission. He just did it, right? Now, a new tenant, if I find a new tenant, would be in there, and that would be a condition of the lease and if he didn't comply, then it would be we could terminate the lease. That would be a condition of terminating the lease. So you're dealing with a new situation.
That's not even for 8 months. What's going to give us confidence that during the next 7 or 8 months, your tenant is going to comply with our conditions? So you're waiting for this tenant to vacate voluntarily. What if, we still have to...
It's not a matter of voluntarily. The lease is up. If the lease is up, I have either a new tenant, or even if this tenant wanted to, that would be the condition.
No, but why can't it? So let me just put it in another way. The storage outside is against the law. So I'm sure in your lease, you have a provision, all leases have that the occupancy has to comply with the law. and this tenant is not complying with the law. So you can invoke your lease and say you must move all of that stuff out of the side yard because it doesn't comply with the law. That's what we've been asking all along. Move that stuff out of the side yard. It's not in compliance with the terms of our grant, therefore it's against the law because this is a use that's not permitted in this district. And that should take care of it. You shouldn't have to wait until August. And then what if the tenant is a holdover and hasn't quite put together about moving, et cetera, et cetera. We often hear this from property owners. It's not my fault, it's the tenant's fault. No, actually, it's the landlord. Your job is to ensure that the site is maintained in a compliant fashion. So you need to issue a letter on, from a lawyer to your tenant that says you need to remove all of that stuff from the side yard and maintain it free of storage. And if you want to store stuff, it has to be in the rear. You can do that now. You can't.
That sounds reasonable.
Immediately.
That sounds reasonable. Yes, I'm on your side. I'm for trying to get it done. I mean, and the best way. That's a good suggestion. I didn't know it is the law, but if it is, it is. That's great.
Right. Yeah, so
I'm sure once it's presented to the tenant in that manner, that puts a new light on everything.
Okay, so in terms of, I'm a little confused about this, but nonetheless, in terms of helping you with that letter, Ms. Anagnostou can call our counsel's office, and the terms of the grant are a variance in this is an art district, right?
Yeah.
The variance in a residence district, and the variance was very specific about how that side yard can be used. Anything different than that is against the terms of the variance, therefore contrary to zoning. And that's what so you're invoking that, and your lease says you have to comply with all laws, okay?
That might be the solution.
Okay, so let's just do that. So what I'd like to see then, Commissioner Otley Brown, are you good with, let's try that?
We can try that, but it just has to be made very clear to your tenant that failure to comply will lead to you paying the price with the possibility of you losing your variance.
Right, okay.
That's all.
Okay, so let's do this. So the first part of it is there's the striping and the landscaping, and you're not going to be able to start doing that until March.
Right, you need.
Actually, we discussed it, and we think he can get it all done by end of May.
Oh, but that's very far away. That's what I mean. So I don't want to have open storage until the end of May. So one way of doing this is you come back in 6 weeks or something like that with photographs to show no open storage. You've already notified your tenant. You've given them, according to the terms of the lease, they have a certain amount of time to cure, whatever that is. So you've given them the time to cure, and you send us the photographs that they've cured and they've cleared up the side yard. And then once sort of construction scheduling, because May is very late, March is when we start to plant, right? So it should be by April that you're back showing us that the work is in place, right?
It may be in place, but I don't know if it would, hopefully it would be, because you have curb things that have to be done and all that stuff. Right.
End of April.
End of April. Yeah, you need warm weather. I don't know if it'll be completed by then, but if it could be started by then.
Okay, well, planting has to happen in March and April.
Yeah, the planting, is one thing, but then you have the construction and you have the fence fixing and the painting, things of that nature. Yeah, well, I mean,
what I'm going to do is going to have you come back within, what is it, normally cure times are like 30 days for tenants. Commissioner Shabeta, does this ring a bell? Cure times for tenants.
It could be, you could do much shorter than that. It's really a contract between between two professionals.
Well, no, if the terms of the lease say you need to cure within a certain time period, but anyway, let's just say at the end of 30 days, we get you back here with your showing photographs of a clean, okay? And that will show us that you've begun the process, that you've contacted, you've demanded cure from your tenant, okay? Okay, so let's go to the public quickly. Oh, and we're going to have to get off of this site really soon.
Right, we got 3 minutes.
Okay.
This is 20768 BZ, 11558 Dunkirk Street, Queens.
If you want to speak on this action, Tony.
You want to speak in this action, the telephone number is 646-558-8656. Zoom webinar ID number is 985-0280-5572. Once again, it's 20768 BZ, 115-58 Dunkirk Street, Queens.
Okay. All right. So in the meantime, while we wait for this, for anybody's response, 30 days, come back with photos showing the side yard clean. And then coming back in late April to show us the installation of the planting and the curbs and fence repair and so on. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Is 30 days, can we do it a little bit more? You said 6 weeks before.
I want to get, so it's 30 days when, all right, it'll end up.
You know, we got to give them the letter, and so, you know, that, and then
It'll end up being 6 weeks when I make the note of 30 days. It's a 30 to submit. So 30 days to submit the photos of the site cleared. Okay, so I'll make it 40 days. How about that? 40 days to submit photos. That gives you, tomorrow you write the letter, or today you write the letter, and you give them 30 days to cure. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right then. So we need to move on to the afternoon session as quickly as I can say it. So the next case, Tony, call the next case.
59976 BZ, 7002 72nd Place, Queens. Do you want to give them keep going?
Yeah, so we're going to have to move that on to the afternoon session because we're losing this 10 a.m. session, and there's a 2 p.m. session. So please call in to the 2 p.m. session. That call-in number again is 646-558-8656. The webinar ID for that session is 974. It's on your screen. 3675-3349, and the passcode, which you may need, is 773010. And you can also register in advance for that webinar by going to our Zoom, either clicking on that link that's on the calendar if you have it, or going to BSA Zoom room link and then registering for that afternoon session. Okay, so we're going to leave now and go on immediately to the 2 p.m. session, and then we have